Hello, folks, and welcome to Totally Tanked, the tankiest podcast in Tankville. It's Saturday, the 9th of... When are we? December sometime?
Yep.
December.
7th of December. Saturday, the 7th of December, 2024.
And this is episode 65. My name is Rob, and I'm joined by...
Hello, I'm John. Welcome to the show. I'm in festive cheer. Rob has decided to let the team down, but
Nobody
that's
told me,
all right.
all right? There was no
It was
indication.
the December episode. Anyway, let's go. Now, if you want an excellent Totally Tanked t-shirt, beer coaster, coffee mug, or cool hat, head over to redbubble.com and search for Totally Tanked.
Yeah. I've just ordered a bunch of T-shirts as Christmas gifts, and you can too. So order now from Redbubble, and they should arrive in time to wrap and hand out to the family members. Any family members you can think to give them a present, no matter what they want.
It will be something unique and different.
Yep.
Yes. Also, if you like the show, and why wouldn't you if you've come this far, for God's sake, smash those like and subscribe buttons. We need all the help we can get with the algorithms because, as you might have noticed, we're not really adjacent to much of the other content. Rob, you've got a special message here.
And Beckett, if you're watching this, it's past your bedtime, and we don't want you getting in trouble. The show will be up on YouTube by the time you wake up. So.
And we don't want to get in trouble with your dad. He seems... Look, we have a lot of respect for him, okay?
All right, getting into the tank. What tank are we doing today? Well, it's the CV-90 and all its cousins, aka the Stridsforden 90 or Combat Vehicle 90. The CV-90 does not come in a flat pack, but it is of modular design, so you can mix and match the pieces as required. Come on,
and any country in the world that is spending
your decor.
But any country in the world that's spending its own money and has snow buys CV-90. With the exception of the British, who thought they'd do better with Ajax.
They don't have that much snow, but yeah. Okay.
And we classed it as a tank for the purpose of this podcast, partly because there is a 120 mil cannon version, although it hasn't gone into production, and also just simply because it functions very much as a light tank that happens to carry.
I was about to say, if you didn't have the 6 people in the back, you could say it would be a light tank. It's just the same as the Sabre and the Scimitar and all those guys, the CRVs were classified under the Continental, whatever, Europe.
Status of forces.
Yeah, status of forces in Europe. It would be a light tank because it's got a gun over 30 mils, I think is what they classify as, rather than a autocannon.
A great big bofers.
Yeah.
Very useful weapon. But, yep. Shall we quickly say hello to the viewers on the live stream, Rob?
Lovely viewers. Rawr! Can't believe you got here for the start of a stream. Good work. Brandon Make Stuff. Howdy. Meowdy. Alan. Hello, Alan. Welcome back. Tasman. Saying g'day from Sydney.
Now
and Beckett.
Beckett. Yeah, Beckett. Your dad says you need to go to bed, and we're just going to leave that between the two of you. Alan sent me an alarming email, I think last night, our time, saying, it's 8 o'clock tonight. I was just like, I don't know, I'll have to look it up. So I'm glad we're teaching some Americans about Canberra time. That's lovely. Cool.
All right. It's a Swedish infantry fighting vehicle designed by Haglunds. However you pronounce it. Don't expect me to be able to do it right. In fact, I'm going to...
I like Haglunds or Haglunds.
I'm going to do it deliberately wrong because that's what I do.
I think it's the umlaut makes it a more extended, so Haglunds. Yeah.
And built by BAE. There were a couple other companies involved.
Saab's been involved too.
Yeah, before BAE bought them in, I think it was 2004, 2003.
Which does still beg the question, if BAE are making this, why are the British building Ajax?
Okay, look, we talk, there's a few instances that would say, well, you could have bought this, but you bought Ajax. Anyway, we're going to make fun of Ajax a lot because, well, he was a mad bastard who killed himself, I think he was, in Trojan Wars. Anyway, maybe that was little Ajax, the big Ajax.
No, he was a big
yeah, I know, but eventually he went mad and killed himself, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, lots of people died in the Trojan War.
Yeah, anyway. Okay, built from 1993 till present. They're still building them. They've built 1,400 so far. They're looking to build a whole lot more because of certain events in Europe. Specifications, all different depending on what configuration you put together, on how you put it together.
And also the early specifications were largely all upgraded to later blocks as well. So, and one of the clever things they did with the design, which everyone tries to do with degrees of success and failure, was very much designate in the plans, this is mission module, this is essential vehicle. Stuff in essential vehicle doesn't get into mission module, and mission module doesn't go into essential vehicle. And that's allowed them to actually get the variants to work really well. It's not built so it's so modular that you could, at a
drop of a hat.
You,
Pull out your Allen key and unscrew one turret and put in another one.
Once it's been built a certain way, it's probably going to stay that way. But before construction, they've got some options. Yeah.
All right. Mass 23 to 38 tons, depending on what mark you're in variant, and
more armor, bigger engines.
Yep. And depending on what kit you add it to. Length 6.8 meters, width 3.2, height 2.8. Still quite low. They've tried to keep it a very small volume to look at. So
particularly for a personnel carrier, with a big turret on it. Yeah.
Crew of 3, commander, gunner, and driver. 6 to 8 troopers in the rear.
This is this classic one where modern IFVs, they're moving away from the idea of carrying a squad and to the idea of carrying 6+2 in the vehicle, and possibly a commander as well. It does have quite a nice arrangement for the troops in the back, though, where the roof panels on the back peel back and they can stick their heads out when they're in a non-threatening environment.
And just making sure the turret doesn't spin around on them and knock all their heads off with the barrel.
Yes,
yes. Which is always fun.
I watched one of those military technology shows on this, like, the turret traverses 360 degrees. I'm like, wow, just like all the others.
There are some that only...
There are some that don't, I know, but it's not a big selling point.
The Frenchies, some of those only do 90 degrees to the front or whatever it is.
Yep. Just quickly, Minty's saying howdy. It's a bit late where they are, so they'll listen on Spotify. Jamie Stokes has joined us.
From Adelaide.
He's drinking Budweiser. And Mark O'Neill. Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
Yeah. Budweiser in Adelaide? I don't know. Anyway. All right.
Sold around the world.
Yep.
Even Adelaide.
Yeah. And the cricket's on this. Armor. Look, it's got bugger all armor, but it does have steel armor rated up to 14.5 mil against 14.5 mils of piercing rounds, or against some cases they have defeated 30 mil rounds of APF SDS. And
they got lucky that day, though.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's relying on that. And then you can throw on applique kits of various other stuff, but it's not composite armor or anything like that. It's just basically steel, a bit of steel, and then you throw some other stuff on top of it, depending on the threat and the weight you want to be able to take.
And we'll get to it later on, but there's some very clever masking stuff they've been working with as well. Yeah.
And then you got the integration. They're looking at getting Iron Fist active protection systems going on it.
Which Iron Fist is interesting. It's the lesser known Israeli active protection system. And moving forward, the Israelis actually want to get the Iron Fist interceptor, the bit that throws the metal at the target, integrated with the trophy radar system. Because they think the Iron Fist interceptor is better, but the trophy radar system's better. And all of these things obviously are moving to a future where they've got to be able to cover the sky and deal with drones as well as incoming anti-tank missiles.
Now we've also got Mark O'Neill and Jamie Stokes online. Thanks, guys. Jamie's reckoning you were the Christmas Rambo.
Yeah, look, I'm dressed for the season. This is my Christmas party outfit.
I'm just wearing my infantry fighting vehicle.
It is stinking hot, though, so the party outfit might have to go at some point.
It is miserably... For cameras are usually a very dry heat. It's not been this week. There's been lots of storms and very humid.
I had to look up the dew point because we've got active cooling on the camera to get it through the show, and if I hadn't changed it and looked it up, we would have been generating dew inside the camera, which I don't think would have been good. Bad thing.
Anyway, main armament. You got a 40 mil Bofors, not a 40-60. It's just a 40 mil. It's one of the L70. Caliber Bofors.
But I mean, the 40 mil Bofors goes back to, if you see pictures of the early ones, it's got the big cone that makes it look like it's a much larger caliber gun. That's a 1930s design, an excellent 1930s design. It's a bit like the 50 cal going back to the 1920s, but yeah.
And then you got a 30 and 35 millimeter Bushmaster autocannons. You're going too fast. All right, which is on the export models of the Mark III and the Mark IV, sort of the Bushmaster 2 and 3s, I think they are. And then you've also got the Cockerell XC8 turret with a 105mm gun and then a 120mm cannon. These are the demonstrators that didn't get picked up.
That Cockerell turret, I think, is the same one that the Indians are using in their light tank as well.
Oh, okay, so it's 105mm rifled gun, yeah?
Yeah, the old L7.
Yes.
But
it's the French one.
Cockerell's a Belgian company.
Sorry.
But, they're going all over the place.
And then you've also got the option of twin 120mm mortars, or nil turrets for the APC variants and all the various choices around there of what the APC variants do.
Yeah, I mean, 120 twin 120 millimeter mortars. You
the
could
Mjolnir.
Mjolnir, yeah, there's in Thor's hammer. You could really clear out some dug-in infantry with that kind of weapon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then you got the secondary armaments, the 7.62 machine guns, FN mags, and F39 various machine guns. So not just the FN mags. Then you got 6 grenade launchers, depending on, and there are some models with more grenade launchers where they've built the grenade launchers into the turret rather than having them external and sitting on the outside. So basically, they're much more streamlined on the built into the hull of the turret. Sorry, the side of the turret.
Yep. Hang on a second. I just need to move this microphone now that I've taken my jacket off.
He says it's too hot. All right.
Yeah, too hot. Okay, let's go.
Twin fire spike ATGMs or remote weapon stations.
That's an interesting one because they definitely have got spike integration in some of them, but when you've got an infantry section riding in the back, you'd almost think you're better off, having them deployed and a bit away from the vehicle with something like Javelin as an anti-tank solution rather than having everything centered around the vehicle and more vulnerable.
It's got a front-mounted engine starting at 670 horsepower, then another version up to 800 horsepower, and the final version so far is the 1,000 horsepower engine. So basically they've which allows them, as they keep adding more weight and more capabilities to the various modular versions of the CV-90, it allows them to maintain their speeds of what they want to be able to do. And in fact, they've got the latest version, they've still got 2 tons spare as to what the engine can do and maintain the speed that they want to do. So that's always a good idea for what
it's great to have weight margin.
Yep. All right, they've got transmission, which is the latest one is the automatic Perkins X300. 3, I've also read with 4 forward gears and 2 reverse. Torsion bar and active suspension. Some with the latest versions have rubber tracks. I know we heard that Alan has thoughts on rubber tracks.
Rubber tracks are interesting because obviously they're much quieter, and apparently the CV-90 with rubber tracks can really sneak up on people and is doing so in Ukraine. Obviously, if a rubber track gets damaged, you've got to replace the whole track. And they're easier to damage than a metal track.
So is this the rubber bands, or is this as well as the rubber actual hard bits?
Rubber grouse is a different kind of thing. That's still a metal track. But at the same time, all the commercial track vehicles have moved to rubber tracks years and years ago. So
all right,
not all of them, most of them.
Operational range off-road of 320 k's, on-road of 900 k's. And they have tested it out with road marches of that far with. I don't know. I'm assuming with infantry as well as just the driver and the crew. Max speed of 70 k's an hour and 40 k's in reverse. So nice and quick in reverse. So that's a good idea. All right,
that's a good speed in reverse. And I mean, 70 kilometers an hour in a vehicle. It's still a 40-ton vehicle. That's getting very fast.
Yeah, it's as fast as you need. As long as
you wouldn't want to try to turn a corner at 70, but
as long as you can take off nice and quick. Because the main thing is your acceleration, and it seems to have pretty good acceleration. All right. Development design. Main priority of 500 requirements was mobility. That was the first thing they said. Right. This thing has to be mobile. We don't care about
particularly mobility in snow.
Yeah. But the top 7 to focus on were extreme mobility, anti-armor capability, anti-aircraft capability, survivability and protection, strategic mobility, and easy maintenance and development potential. So they said, yep, we're going to have a good tank, but we also want a tank we're going to be able to keep on upgrading. And that's what they did. So during the late 70s, they started studying vehicles as they rose in weight due to demands to increase payload and weight and volume. So it's extra armor, bigger guns, more armor, bigger guns, bigger engines, more armor. At the same time, use in northern Sweden was prioritized to be able to operate in deep snow and marshlands. At this time, the opinion was that it was not possible for tanks. Keep going.
Yeah.
Not possible for tanks to operate in those sort of environments based upon the relative poor mobility of the Centurion and the S-Tank. In the early 80s, the studies focused on the vehicles with the capability of penetrating the sides of contemporary tanks at the same time as carrying a rifle squad of 8 soldiers. The studied armament was a caliber of 25 to 60 mils. The threat scenario included helicopters and low-flying aircraft, which gave a special focus to the Bofors 40mm and 57mm anti-aircraft high-pressure guns. The main thing was the vehicle mobility is ground pressure, as this gives sinkage, and by that motion resistance. By comparing existing vehicles, it can be seen that the ground pressure increases in proportion to vehicle weight. What a surprise.
Well, yeah, I mean, except the Swedes actually got their universities in on this, and they basically invented new applications of physics to figure out how to simulate the effect of road wheels on unstable ground, and that gave them this design that, given that every other country that deals with a lot of snow that Sweden will sell to has chosen to buy it, except maybe Canada, that's a real. They seem to have cracked it.
All right. Yeah. And once the possible solution to maintain high mobility in spite of a heavy vehicle was to use overlapping road wheels, as seen by the Germans during World War II. They did this to have 7 road wheels instead of the basic 5. The result was measured ground pressure was reduced with a factor of 5 to 7, and then the rolling resistance from soil compaction was reduced proportionally. So what that meant was they put more extra road wheels in, and they could go through a metre of snow, marshy terrain, swampy terrain, because Sweden has lots of both of those things.
When it's not frozen with snow on it, it's swampy.
Yeah. So
full of mosquitoes,
and because when the snow melts, it makes it swampy. And so they said, right, if we want to be able to traverse, because there's a lot of lack of a lot of roads in northern Sweden, especially when you want to be able to get from one road to another, and if you want to go across country, then that's what you're going to be going through. Okay. All right. Big part of it, they were very focused on design and development period was half the time for maturing element of the vehicles, where the Swedish Armed Forces carried out further improvements. So basically, they built it, and then they rolled it out, and then said, right, keep using it and tell us what we need to fix and or make better so that we actually achieve what we want to do.
It's an astonishing approach these days, Rob. They actually asked the soldiers what they thought of it. And then they took that feedback and they listened to it.
Yeah, and saying, okay, R&D is 2 years, maturing it, as in having people testing it and using it, and then we fixing it, and then we test it and use it again, 4 years or whatever the case was. With Denmark and Norway, here's a fun one. With Denmark and Norway now the tallest people on average at 182 centimetres, building an IFV to fit 6 to 8 troops in the back will get hard because they're getting taller.
They've given up on 8, and they're kind of moving from 6 to 7 these days. Though. Just like frankly we're doing here in Australia as well. But
All right. So further notes on the designs. It's got 4 exhausts to reduce the sound and thermal heat signature of the exhaust. So rather than having 1 or 2, they've got 4.
Yeah, and this gets back to my bugbear. You never actually eliminate thermal heat, but what you can do is diffuse it. Which is definitely what they're doing there.
With very thin armour, a determined effort was made to reduce the visibility of the vehicle, making its profile 30% smaller than other Western IFVs. Because have you seen the size of the Boxer? It's huge.
Now, on our Facebook, we shared a pair of local Australian 4-wheel driving YouTubers got to drive some Boxers around Shoalwater Bay.
Oh, okay.
And they got them horrendously bogged. But
had to get towed out with a Hilux?
Well, no, they had to bring in the special extraction vehicle, which looks like it could easily get bogged itself. But anyway, Boxer is an immense vehicle. If you see pictures of it, it dwarfs a main battle tank.
Yeah, I was about to say it's much bigger than the Abrams. Anyway, it's huge. So by saying that, even with Bradleys, it's 30% smaller than a Bradley, just in what you can see from externally. So they've said, look, we're just going to make it going for the idea of you can't hit what you can't see. So if you're not seeing it, then you're probably not going to be shooting at it.
It's quite the design achievement to fit everything in at within the weight spec, to get the soldiers in the back, to get the very capable fighting turret on top in the smaller package.
And they said, we want to build all this and still have the biggest volume inside as we possibly can. So we've got to have all the stuff that we want to be able to do on the outside, including all the warfighting stuff of the electronics and the computering and so forth here. But we still want to have as large a volume on the inside as we can so we can have troops, either 6 or 8, depending on how tall they are. And another fun one is when operating in winter at high latitudes, you only have short hours of daylight. So you need to be good at night fighting with good optics, so whether it's thermal, infrared, or radar, etc., and have electronics that work in the cold. So infantry-operated ATGMs don't work as well in the cold, especially the electronics and the optics. So direct fire support weapons are more important to support your forces.
That's an interesting one, because I know with early American heat seekers, they had to literally drop liquid hydrogen onto the heat seekers before they fired them to cool them down.
Cool.
But, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so basically you want a cannon because ATGMs don't always do what you need to do in extreme cold. Very easy to drive, designed to be operated and maintained by conscripts, even though I think Sweden's gotten rid of their conscripts, but
they're still very proud of them.
Okay, so it's built to be easy to use and to keep operating. So the training, the maintenance activities, all that happens by the crew and have all the tools that they can do themselves there. It's only when something goes bad, you have to actually take it back to your second line repair facilities.
It's an interesting one, because in this development process, they very much made a decision to get as much commercial off-the-shelf electronics in as they possibly could. And it was around the era when, in the 80s, military grade meant more sophisticated than civilians can buy. And it was around after then that this pace of technological change started happening so fast. Military grade now means 30 years out of date. So the Swedes definitely picked the right moment to make that jump.
Yeah, and but they've also maintained the ability to keep upgrading these things. So where they did have it was more wires, electrical systems. Now they're electronic systems, so they've taken out a lot of the wires and put in the electronic systems, which is, again, saving weight, space, and everything else. And they've kept on upgrading those things, where a lot of countries have said, you know what, we're just going to add on without taking out any of those bits of copper and wire and everything else.
Systems integration is hard.
Yeah. All right, strategic, operational, tactical mobility were very important. So strategic mobility was very small profile and low weight means it's air transportable and can fit in any rail envelope, so you don't have it running into the sides of cliffs. Roll on, roll off of ferries or other shipping vessels. So again, if you need to move it from any of the peninsulas of Sweden, Denmark, or wherever else to places where it needs to be.
It's amazing, Rob. If you build it with a small profile so that it's harder to hit, it's also easier to transport.
Operational mobility.
These Swedes, what will they think of next?
They've thought of a lot of things, I've got to say. And with like a population of 10 million, so I'm saying, where's our bloody tank industry, eh?
We're building boxes.
Yeah. Operational mobility. It's reliable and comfortable enough that a force can go on a road march of hundreds of kilometres and still be combat effective. I.e., enough vehicles arrive to fight, and the crews and the mounted infantry are not so broken and fatigued that they are ineffective. So, yeah, you can throw people in the back and drive a long way and still get out and fight a battle, which is very important. Tactical. It's built to traverse both the deep snow and marshy woodlands of Sweden at speed and not get bogged with its 7 road wheels.
Now we come to the Barracuda camouflage.
Barracuda. All right. It's a system that can be applied to the vehicle to hide the infrared and thermal signatures. There's even a poncho version that infantry can wear that acts like an elven cloak from Lord of the Rings when viewed from through thermal images. So it was pretty cool. But
I mean, it's a good idea to start saying, how does a thermal imager view the world and how do we spoof that? Because tank commanders very much these days rely on just, there's a tank-shaped thing on my thermal imager, bang.
Well, that's nothing compared to the adaptive ghost version of the camo. The ghost panels can be applied, the adaptive is called, can be applied to the vehicle and allows the crew to electronically select what thermal signature profile can be seen by quickly controlling the temperature of the panels, whether it's a CV-90, a car, a moose, a different tank, or identifying words or symbols on the side of the tank like "Don't shoot me."
Now, I've got some doubts about this. All right, so you can say, "Oh, look, we can put a silhouette of a car on here," and then if the tank commander sees a car, he'll go, "Oh, that's not a tank, that's a car." But if you're on a battlefield and there's a car, you're probably like, "Well, I'm going to drop some discarding sabo on that car."
If you're in an urban environment,
but you're starting to.
Okay, what if you're in the woods and you see a moose?
Drop around on that too. Moose for dinner.
or you could even just use that, or you could even just show the background environment so it disappears from thermal vision completely, right? So it just disappears because it's showing the same heat as what's on the far side of the vehicle. And this is
It's always been the dream of camouflage to be able to do that, or the Predator movies.
Yeah.
But
Harry Potter has an invisibility cloak, which makes the operators grateful for the long nights of the Arctic Circle as you disappear from. Because remember, if you've got 23 hours of nighttime, being invisible at night is not a bad thing.
Or being thermally lit up is a very bad thing.
Yeah.
It's still got the issue that it's a tank with the engine running is still a hot thing and is hiding that heat without having it build up inside.
That's what the adaptive camo does.
It's got to be going somewhere though.
Yeah, or the other one they tried. Does get it in this chapter. All right. So another advanced concept being tried on the CV-90 120T. For those who don't know,
the one with the big gun.
It's the one with the big gun, but it's the T version, not the concept version. This is the trial version, I guess. I don't know. Is the infrared mist dispensers, which surround the vehicle with an infrared/laser disrupting mist. So basically, they throw up a lot of fog cloud. So if you're playing D&D, it's like you're obscuring mist you cast around your character, so you don't get shot from afar. Which then breaks up any lasers locking onto your vehicle to slow down any ATGMs.
You are kind of radiating your general position while hiding your specific position.
Yeah, but it doesn't throw up a big cloud of smoke identifying where you are, because smoke's a lot easier to see from a distance. All right, whereas a bunch of water droplets are a lot harder. It also doesn't block your own line of sight. So if you surround yourself with smoke and you can't see out, and say you can't see the little bugger coming up beside you, about to slap an anti-tank mine on the side of your vehicle. Or whatever.
If the infantry are getting at you with anti-tank mines...
coming within range with an RPG-7. How's that?
Sure, okay.
Yeah. All right, so that's what they can do with that. All right, the paint used is also radar absorbent, and the Ghost version incorporates design features to reduce radar signature, which seems to be a bit implausible as it has a lot of flat sides that radars love to bounce off of.
You could absorb the radars to reduce signature, and signature reduction is not to be laughed at for all the, I know my previous statements about heat, but yeah.
Active protection systems are being developed as the CV-90 family to increase its survivability against incoming weapons, rounds, rockets, rounds, missiles, and rockets. So again, the active systems are going to basically, if you're firing an ATGM or even a tank round is trying to throw out something to slow those down and not hurt you. It does have NBC protection systems, which have been pointed out will also work against thermobaric weapons, which the Russians like to use.
Well, it means their seals have to be good, basically.
Yeah, but you want that for nuclear protection anyway, don't you? All right, then we come to the fun stuff, the programmable ammo. The 3P ammunition, pre-fragmented programmable proximity fused ammunition with 1,100 tungsten pellets. They've got 6 function modes that allow the gunner to select the target and have the ammo know what will be best against that type of target. So you've got troops in trenches. You want so if you've got troops in trenches into your front, you want a controlled dispersion. So the rounds burst overhead at a staggered range, completely covering the area. So what that allows you to do, you fire 3 rounds. The first one goes off at the front of the trench. The second one goes off at the top of the middle of the trench, and the third one goes off at the back of the trench. And so you kill all the poor bastards sitting there.
But when this gun starts going burr, because it really goes bzzz, the hail of cartridge brass coming out of it, it's like a waterfall. It's really quite something to see. Sorry, we don't have video of that here. Yep. Anyway.
Concrete buildings with troops inside, you want the basic armor piercing function. Light armored vehicles, armor piercing explosive rounds, or even APFSDS. Helicopter or drones at 1,000 meters, you want the gated proximity function. Ensures the round explodes before, on, or after the target to ensure its movement is accounted for. So basically you say, here's my target, I want a gated proximity round. You fire off 3 rounds behind, in front, on, and in front. So even if it's moving, you're probably going to get the target, whatever it's doing.
Steve has joined us. Steve Grimes from the Sonoran Desert. Hello, Steve.
I have no idea where the Sonoran Desert is. Is it one of ours? No.
It's California, I thought. I could be wrong. Steve, tell us where your desert is.
I was about to say, I haven't heard of it before. All right. All-round cameras means the driver and commander can stay buttoned up even when reversing at speed. No need for wing mirrors, which plenty of 80s vehicles still use.
Although the Chieftain did a really interesting one on the Striker mobile gun system, and he was pointing out that the wing mirrors are actually just really handy for figuring out what the sides of your vehicle are, as well as...
They probably take wing mirrors off for actual combat, because that's a very highly reflective thing that it's going to give you away a lot. Does have aircon, heating, and a radio, as in FM AM radio. The Ukrainian troops have been saying, Yeah, we can listen to music on this thing. It's nice.
Well, I mean, certainly the Americans I know used to
Central Arizona.
The Americans used to use their comms networks and plug an iPod into the jack. But
nowadays, when everybody is used to having their phones to listen to music on, and you're not allowed to have phones in these things anymore because they give away
your position.
So having an AM/FM radio that you can just
Which
receive,
just a receiver,
that's a pretty good thing. So they're actually quite enjoying that.
Okay, so yep, Steve's in Central Arizona. Thank you, Steve.
Well, but yeah. Anyway, the CV-90 120T has a rate of fire of 14 rounds per minute.
I would like to see that.
As it's only supposed to have 12 rounds in the semi-auto loader, the rest of the 45 rounds, so the other 33, are stored in the turret and the hull. They must measure the 14 from already having one in the chamber and the commander holding one. Yeah, but otherwise, how do you get to 14 in a minute if you can't actually physically get 14?
But when you're measuring cyclic rate of fire, if you can only fire for 30 seconds and you do 7 rounds, you claim that as 14 rounds a minute.
But you can't, though.
They do it all the time. Like aircraft cannon claim to be 3,000 rounds per minute, but they only carry 250 rounds.
Anyway,
it's very disappointing.
Well, I'm not looking at those knuckle draggers, so I'm looking at tank command, what tanks can do. All right. Okay, so with the 120T, the original Swiss 120mm gun makers went out of business, so they now use the Rheinmetall L50 reduced recoil 120mm gun, smoothbore gun.
L50's because 55 is the standard now, isn't it, for the calibers?
Oh, God. I want to say I also saw a L47, so maybe I got that one wrong. Who knows?
Oh, okay.
And from my observations, you can tell the difference by what resembles an old iron sight on top of the barrel of the new Rheinmetall gun.
Be for indexing, but
yep. Yeah. It'll be for something clever and electronic to keep the barrel on target, but it looks like an old iron sight as seen it on the Wild West. And as I was saying before, as you've only got, I think, 2 versions, 2 actual
prototypes, basically.
Prototypes, yeah.
And the Polish PL1, which is always dragged out as the tank of the future because it's got a beautiful streamlining, is basically a CV-90 120T with some extra plastic staple on it.
Right. Okay. It's got battlefield information sharing, so between your aircraft, your artillery, and everything else. Basically, very clever in that way. They've done a lot of work on having integrated information between all your various bits and pieces. And I'll get to some other bits with that later. The autocannons have -8 to +35 degrees of gun depression elevation, so quite high. And for the anti-aircraft version, it goes in higher, up to 45.
It did start life as an anti-aircraft gun, so you'd hope it. But that's incredibly good elevation compared to, shall we say, Russian designs.
Yeah. So this is for the Bofors. Anyway. Don't drive the driver's hatch open as it sits vertical to the left of the hull, thus blocking the driver's vision to the left, and would be bad if the turret traverses and the barrel hits the hatch. I'm sure the Swedish have something very clever for this, but no one's talking about it. There is a top hatch for the infantry to stand up and watch out over the countryside, go by.
Shoot their guns, pew pew?
Yeah, they certainly can.
No, don't do that. It's more to be able to get out quickly without jumping out the rear hatch. But
it's probably to stop them getting car sick. Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
But yeah, watch out for the turret traversing with the barrel. What else we got? All right, so front-mounted engine provides extra survivability for the front glasses, unless the round hits on the driver's side, in which case everyone is in trouble, as the driver body doesn't provide as much protection as the turret to the turret crew as the engine does.
Look, I mean, the Israelis make a big thing about this with the Merkava and the Nama, and obviously, an engine as a last resort is a big, heavy chunk of metal that will stop a lot of rounds. At the same time, it's not your ideal armor, but fine.
The CV-90 120 first appeared in 1998 at the Eurosatori Defense Exhibit in Paris, but even before then, they had tried mounting the 105mm gun back in 1993 with the CV-90 105 TML, installing a GIAT Industries TML 105 turret. Which is
basically a French L7.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's say there's probably at least 3 CV-90 120 turrets from 1998 to 2011. There was the prototypes. There was the 120T marketed vehicle, and then there's the CV-90 120 Ghost. It's not been shown that there are more of the turrets, and being modular, they may not even have dedicated chassis. So it's possible, we don't know, that they've just pull these turrets out, put them in storage, and then whack them on an empty chassis when they want to start marketing these things to somebody, and they have other ones, because it's kind of what they did for the mortar carriers, when the Amos mortar carrier got shelved in 2013 when they were looking at building it, and then the Mjolnir mortar carrier got reactivated in 2017 to 2019, whereby they said, okay, we kept the chassis from these other ones that hadn't been purchased, so now we're just going to whack these new turrets in on them. So they went.
Rakow is noting that it's reasonably normal to have the engines forward in these vehicles, so
because
you have the door at the back.
Troops at the back, yep. Susi tracks. These are our rubber band tracks. They reduce the vehicle weight by more than a ton compared with conventional steel tracks. They also cut the noise by a massive 10 decibels. So that's half the sound, I want to say. I'm not very good with this sound sort of stuff. I think 10 decibels is half the sound of it.
Yeah, you get an issue that decibels work on square powers, so 10 decibels at the top is a very different number to 10 decibels at the bottom. It's... I have heard from multiple sources that the rubber tracks are extremely quiet, and they are scaring the Russians in Ukraine because they used to be able to hear armored vehicles coming, and with these things they can be very close.
Clank of Russian steel tracks. All right, so it reduces the vibration levels by 65%, which would be really nice for your mounted troops.
As opposed to Ajax.
Yep. It's very quiet. You only hear the sound of the tracks hitting the ground, and not even and you don't hear the engine when it's coming towards you. It's only when it's gone past you actually hear the engine. And hello for Jay Bowser and from Chattanooga. Thanks for coming on.
How are the choo-choos, mate? Sorry, I know you must be sick of that, but we're here.
All right. The Mark IV features a new augmented reality system named iFighting.
I hate this.
I
hate every word in that sentence.
I wonder if Apple have anything to say about this. Like, hang on a second, you're not allowed to put an eye in front of something.
Well, yeah. Do they want to take these on? I don't know.
The iFighting concept uses data from different systems with the vehicle to filter and prioritize the most critical information, allowing quicker crew decision making and improved battlefield performance. So basically, they put AI in it to say this is of the 6 streams of information that are coming in from the various electronic systems within the tank. This is the one you need to be paying attention to, because there's an ATGM coming in on you. And while we might automate some of these things, you might want to have there might be other parts that require the meat bags inside to say, press this button to not die.
Look, these things are important, and when they work well, they can be amazing, but they do present the risk that the enemy is going to figure out how to spoof various effects in them, and that will get people killed. So, yeah. We're going to the Railway Museum on Sunday. Okay.
Enjoy it.
Excellent.
I'll see if we get it. Okay. Nice. Thanks. Going to go grab an Australian beer there.
All right, so Jay Bowser in Chattanooga is going to the Railway Museum. We've confirmed there are trains to choose.
The Mark IV generation is also the first Western IFV with a active protective system. It's equipped with 4th generation.
Hang on. I mean, that's calling the Israelis non-Western is a bit of a stretch. But,
well, have they put them on their
IFV? Definitely.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's equipped with... we're divorced from the Israelis, mate. That's they're not
I don't feel like we have. I wish we had.
It's equipped with 4th generation electronic architecture supporting a future technology adoption and growth. Now, it talks about continuous eye-on target engagement feature. And I read that and I said, how does that work? It says that the crew members don't need to remove their head from the eyepiece to... Sorry, I thought it might mean that the crew doesn't have to remove their head from the eyepiece to see and operate the equipment. So I'm guessing that inside the eyepiece the crew is looking through, that they also have some sort of HUD or reflected overlay of the controls and hands so they can see what they're doing without moving their head away from the target.
I'm just getting some sort of Clockwork Orange vibes here with the hooks under the eyelids too.
Or is there a mouse style selector in the eyepiece GUI that allows them to select the function they want? I just don't know. I'm sure it's very clever. I'm sure if I had a look at it, I'd be able to say, I can see how they're doing, but nobody's shown me.
I have no doubt it's clever, but you're right. heading into the territory of extremely classified there as well.
Yeah,
So,
there you go. Conflicts. The Swedes are deployed to the Liberian Civil War in 2004 and providing UN assistance there, and they took their CV-90s with them then. Afghanistan, deployed by the Netherlands and Denmark from 2007. One Danish CV-90-30 and one Norwegian one was damaged by IEDs, killing a number of the crew each time. They also got another two damaged by IEDs, but the crew survived.
Look, it's got the problem that an IFE is no one's yet managed to make an IFE MRAP in that the V-shaped hulls that protected vehicles will make the vehicle enormously high, and no one wants to make that compromise. So infantry fighting vehicles remain more vulnerable for the crew.
The points that were made at the time were if the Taliban had drones like the Russians and Ukrainians are using nowadays, they probably would have much preferred to use those than the huge 155 rounds that they'll bury in the side of the roads and having to keep an eye on and then detonate with a mobile phone.
Which is easily jammed and all sorts of things.
Yeah, so they would much rather have had... So be glad that they didn't have drone technology, because you can do a lot more with drone technology than with the much smaller rounds than the huge rounds that they were using to try and take them out from underneath.
Yeah. Now, I do believe CV-90, and I could be wrong, but I believe it does have the crew seating suspended from the ceiling, which is the standard way to deal with.
They've made the anti-mine capabilities within the vehicle much greater since then. So basically, they're trying to upgrade all these things because they're realizing, well, it's much easier just to keep your troops alive than if you just do a few things.
It's hard to find new ones.
Yeah. Ukrainian invasion. 50 CV-90-40s gifted to Ukraine from Sweden in 2023. Instances where the vehicles faced aggressive assaults from multiple T-90 tanks without succumbing to the attacks further illustrate its robustness. Since then, they've lost one destroyed and one damaged and captured by the Russians, which is now on display in Moscow. Now, here's an idea for a heist movie: stealing captured tanks back from Red Square. That would...
Yeah, it's a long way back to the border.
I just keep thinking back to the old Clint Eastwood movie with the Firefox. You remember that from the 80s?
It was one of my favourite movies.
Where you had there was the neural interface where you
had to think in Russian.
He had to think in Russian to be able to fly this plane out of the base that he'd snuck into. So
which was based on was it the Fox Bat that a defector flew out of. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was the fastest fighter plane in the world at the time, and had the Americans quite concerned until they realised it was a bunch of sheet iron with enormous engines that tore themselves apart to get supersonic. But yeah. Anyway.
Right. So, however, the worries are that the Russians will reverse engineer some of the advances in CV-90 to apply to their own vehicles. The thermal paint, the Barracuda camo, which was captured, along with the 3P programmable ammo.
Look, I wouldn't be so worried about the Russians replicating it, because the Russians just don't have access at the moment to the same markets for electronics. But I would be very worried about the Russians finding ways to circumvent the systems. That if I was the Russians, that's what I'd be aiming to do. I mean, there's a reason they've restarted the T-80 production line. You know, they're not going forward with the technology. They're trying to get their volume back up. Yeah.
All right. The Ukrainian crews have learned how to use the 40mm Bofors for indirect fire out to 7 kilometres, which is not something their Swedish trainers had taught them. They just said, you know what, I don't want to be showing myself, so I'm just going to start lobbing rounds downrange and see what they hit.
It's a very accurate turret and gun system,
yeah,
and that's part of the reason why they're loving it. Yeah.
They would also like slightly bigger ammo racks for the Bofors, as at the moment they only hold 3 cartridges of 8 rounds each. It's quick to reload, but they have expressed a desire to be able to carry out longer engagements without reloading.
I can get why the Ukrainians in a specific war might have that feeling, but at the same time, there's a limit to how long you should be staying in one place shooting before you're moving the vehicle anyway, and the loader has time to...
Well, you're firing on the move, because it's got these newer versions. So the original versions didn't have stabilizers and couldn't fire on the move, but now everything does, so why not?
Yeah, I can see where the Swedes are coming from with the ammo loadout they've given it versus... there's obviously huge trade-offs for making it bigger, and you don't want to be continuously firing for that long.
No.
Yeah.
Operators, sold to 7 different European nations so far, and it helps you have it crossing your flag to operate them. So praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Estonia and Netherlands choose to be a little bit different with their flags. So it's Sweden.
Where's the UK, Rob? Where's the UK? A flag made of crosses and no CV-90s.
Andrew, George, Michael?
David? David.
There you go. All right, so Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, Estonia, Netherlands, and Ukraine, with the Czech Republic and Slovakia in the process of buying. And Poland was looking at them, but haven't quite. But there's a couple of countries looking at and evaluating whether or not they buy them, whether it's Brazil or other places. There are talks of Ukraine buying or building up to 1,000 CV-90s, or just building a heavy repair facility in countries so they can maintain their fleet of vehicles quickly.
That would be the smart thing to do quickly.
Yep. The Netherlands has also signed up to start building their own CV-90s under license, and will start delivering the first Dutch-built CV-90s to Ukraine in 2026. Fun fact, Bofors Company has been in operation for over 370 years, starting as a Royal Hammer Mill with a forge in 1646. They got into the weapons industry in 1870 and were owned by Alfred Nobel for a little while, from 1894 until his actual death in 1896. Since 2005, Bofors has been part of BAE.
Which no one actually knows what the hell BAE is anymore, and what
they're
country
everything.
it's from. And
they're everything.
Yeah, I mean,
they're like BlackRock. They're just everything.
They've had to become an American company to sell into America, and but they still have the traditional Vickers facilities all over the UK. Yeah, it's going to be tears one day. But
right. CV-90 related, one of the reasons that NATO-aligned Denmark, Netherlands and Norway went with the Bushmaster 30 and 35mm autocannons was that Sweden could not guarantee, supposedly Sweden could not guarantee supply of the 40mm Bofors rounds for anyone but themselves.
Let's not forget that in the Vietnam War, Australia couldn't get ammunition for its Carl Gustavs because the Swedes decided they weren't going to sell us.
They were neutral. They're now part of NATO, but
well,
back then they were neutral, and
they
didn't have to.
They have to make sure their rounds are available for everyone else. Then they have to share.
So, well, that's what I'm saying. This is why the NATO countries said, you know what, we'll buy the Western the Bushmaster versions. Thank you. Where we can make sure that we'll always get supplied with ammunition.
Well, yeah. Anyway, American ammunition suppliers, as the Ukrainians are finding out, have their own issues.
And welcome to the Kilted Privateer.
Hello
from Seattle. Well done. Thanks for joining us. So outside of Sweden, the 40mm Bofors rounds are only available from Serbia and South Korea, whereas Bushmaster rounds are widely available. Future sales have been signed with Slovakia and the Czech Republic, with the Czechs version wanting an uncrewed turret. How that's going to work when who knows? Anyway, models.
It's going to be quite a redesign. I think the Czechs should reconsider that.
Models. Okay, produced from 1993, the CV-90 Mark 0, or the 9040 Swedish-only version, which with the 40mm Bofors gun deployed from 1993, could not fire accurately on the move. The Mark 1 version produced for Norway and came with the 30mm Bushmaster autocannon, could fire accurately on the move. The Mark 2, or the 9030, or Grenadier Tank 2000.
Grenadier Tank 2000 sounds awesome.
Yeah, produced for the Swiss Army, with either the 30mm Bushmaster 2 autocannon or the that's fine. Brought the vehicle much more into the electronic age, with displays for each crew member and supporting applications to support it. Finland also bought bought those Mark 2s. CV-90 Mark 3s, or the CV-90 35, produced for the Netherlands in 2004, with the Bushmaster 3 35mm autocannon, with the rotating cupola for the commander and gunner, stabilised day-night sights, increased protection against top attack systems. Denmark also ordered these in 2005. The CV-90 Mark 4, the 5th generation vehicle with improved speed and handling, 1,000 horsepower engine, X300 heavy-duty transmission, SUSI rubber band tracks and no track return rollers, automatic track tensioning by the driver. The tracks are lighter, quieter, decreased vibration, increased range, and improved protection against fire and mine blasts.
Now, when we discussed the tracks earlier, one of our friends did mention that rubber tracks also produce a lot less road wear, which is no small issue for moving the vehicles around in countries. But there is the issue that if they get damaged, you're replacing the whole track, and have you got a spare track with you? If not, you're waiting till someone brings you one.
Can also have an uncrewed turret. So the modular nature allows you to plug in extra machine guns, ATGMs, box laser or UAV housing unit, observation or recon devices, increased smoke grenade discharges up to 8 on each side, built into the armor rather than mounted outside it. Designed for eye fighting concept, which is fully networked with a much improved GUI, assisting in improving crew decision-making processes via AI and augmented reality to provide information to the crew. A CV-90 Mark V version is being explored, but not yet built or paid for, with a possible hybrid electronic propulsion system, fully digitized C4ISR system, further improvements to the heat, radar, and visual signature management of the vehicle. So pretty much invisible when will I get to the flying part. Remember what old mate, was it Bradley, you were saying? I wanted this.
Oh, Mike Sparks.
Yeah.
With the M113s.
Yeah, and I want it invisible, and I want it flying. Beyond line of sight, Acheron or Spike anti-tank guided missiles and built-in UAV drones for surveillance and recon.
Now, just quickly, Russ UFOs joined us from South Wales and UK. We're surrounded by New South Wales here, so South Wales solidarity. And Tasman says, don't forget to push the like button, which I think means you lot out there should hit the like button on this video. I'm going to go with that. Continue, please, Rob.
Right. Well, scroll up. 15 variants. Now, how are we going for that beer?
There's enough beer there to top you up, or we'll go halves in that.
That's right. 15 variants from what BA Propaganda is selling. We've got the turret. That's right. We have Commander's Reserves. Is selling. They got the turret version, which is your infantry fighting vehicle with the 30, 35, and 40 mil guns on it. The recce reconnaissance version, which basically just has more sensors basically. The command and control version with consoles instead of map desks in the back. So they've, they rather than saying, look, we'll just give you a spot to put a map. I mean, I'm sure they still have maps and they can put a map on top of the console, but they actually have it's a console, 3 consoles in the back rather than giving the map desks. Anti-aircraft vehicle with higher elevation 40 mil guns and radar links into the Swedish air defense system. So you've got much more powerful radars out there saying you've got incoming fast flies from this direction. Start throwing up rounds now.
Organic radar. It's one of these where you've got to say what the role is for the vehicle because a big radiating radar makes you a big target to anything that can sense radar.
That's what I'm saying. But if you got the whole country,
if you can be cued off site, that's what
I'm saying. If you've got a more powerful system that's further away. Telling you what's going on around the place. You got the mortar versions, which is they started out with the Amos 2 by 120 mil mortars, which was cancelled, and then the Mjolnir, which was built and deployed since 2019. Combat repair and forward observer vehicles, basically just more stuff. Non-turret versions, you got the APC/VIP transport. That's basically just where they, if you want to move things around in a protected environment.
VIP transport, we're never going to talk too much about it, but it's not an insignificant role. And when you look at the number of, commanding officers and politicians who've been killed trying to visit the front line, it's not insignificant. You do need to be able to do this stuff.
You got the combat engineer vehicle with a mine plow or roller and a robot arm. I'm not sure what they do with a robot arm, except maybe disarm IEDs or something. I don't know. Kazovac.
Hang on, robot arm, is that on the combat engineer? Oh, you'd be using it to lift things up and put things in place.
I didn't seem to say when I looked at it and said, well, usually you would say it's a winch or a crane, but it didn't seem to say it was a crane. But anyway, maybe it was a crane and it was just translated poorly from the Swedish. Kazovac, so it's not an ambulance. You're not allowed to shoot at ambulances. The armoured recovery vehicle with 2 winches, able to recover up to 72 tonnes. A logistics carrier. I don't know how many of those are actually out there, but anyway. Electronic
logistics carrier, we're talking about something that carries fuel and ammunition, right?
You'd say that, but
Or
I
spare
couldn't.
parts.
Yeah, I couldn't.
That's
I couldn't.
logistics.
Yeah, I know, but I couldn't actually find all rounds for your other vehicles. Your electronic warfare, I couldn't find any descriptions of the logistics characters.
No one ever tells you what they're up to.
Electronic warfare had its turret placed in a fixed housing containing a retractable mast, which was not produced, not purchased. So BAE, basically, this is all from the BAE propaganda.
Yeah, they've got it in the catalogue.
Yeah, so you can buy these things. Pick and choose from number 5, thanks. Drive a training vehicle. Mortar carriers, where you drive around with an 81 mil mortar in the back, pop the top crew hatch, and then let off a few rounds before driving off again.
It looks a little...
I mean, we used to do that with the M113s in Australia.
Yeah.
We probably still do.
It looks a little lame watching the crew prop the hatches open and to get this thing to fire, but, I'm sure they're better at it when they're getting shot at.
Yeah. Coming attractions, we'll believe it when we see it, but probably only concept versions or prototypes, unless they can start making some bigger sales, which is you got the direct fire 105 and 120 mil guns. They built at least 3 120 mil gun turrets, maybe 2, unless they've just repainted the Ghost turret. With a limit of 45 120 mil rounds available and a role of infantry support, you want to make sure you've got the right mix of rounds. Only a couple of APF SDS and mostly AP HE to take out buildings and bunkers. But
it's also you've got to have an ability to select the right round at the right time, which is incredibly complicated with autoloaders. But
it's a semi-auto loader.
Yeah.
But for taking out buildings and bunkers, the 40 mil Bofors will do that pretty well enough. So you don't need a 120 mil gun for that.
Yeah, 40 millimeters of high explosive is a useful round against anything but very hard targets.
Yeah, it's pretty much the thoughts are saying, well, why go with a 120 unless you take on tanks? And this thing shouldn't be taking on tanks.
But also your dismounts armed with javelins can take tanks out extremely effectively. So
unless it's too cold.
Well, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah. All right. Though they're still being marketed.
It's that cold, the dismounts don't want to get it anyway.
They'll be fine. All right, they're still marketed by BAE systems. There are currently no operators of the CV-90 120T Ghost or Ghost, and it remains as a demonstrator. Then they were unveiled in 2014. The 105X8 is the second model of the 105 medium tank, as described by the manufacturer. The first being the 105 TML turret. It utilizes off-the-shelf components, the Belgian Cockerel XC8 105 turret and the Swedish BAE Systems 9040. Anyway, I'm
sorry, there was a lot of Swedish on the screen for Rob there.
It offers the flexibility to convert any mark of the CV-90 infantry fighting vehicle into fire support vehicle with anti-tank capabilities or medium tank for rapid reaction forces, thanks to its 20. They started out with a 25-ton. It goes up from there, but no, I mean it's still.
If you can get a 120 mil gun on a 25-ton vehicle,
this is 105.
Oh, okay, well,
it's still good enough.
Yeah. I mean, normally you're talking 40-ton for that kind of capability.
Yeah. Okay, they're also looking at an engineer version and a bridge layer version and an artillery version with a 155 gun on it, which in case you'll need a dedicated ammo carrier or trailer to go with it.
As you can't carry the ammunition.
You won't be able to carry a lot of 155 rounds in that. Okay, now Legacy. My thoughts on the Legacy. Its catchphrase is going to be fitted for but not with. Oh, sorry, fitted for but not bought. So having started life out as a highly mobile IFV built for the Nordic environment, the CV-90 seems to have morphed into a vehicle built to showcase design concepts. And some of them are really cool. All right, but no country is ready to start paying for innovative designs instead of sticking to the tried and proven variants of the CV-90 family or building Ajax for some godforsaken reason. So look, it's been battle proven, tried and tested, and it comes up, does well. So why wouldn't you start buying? But BAE has put together some slick advertising to raise the excitement levels to the 120T and the Ghost camo. But until militaries start changing the makeup of their mechanized infantry formations to include the need for integral 120 mil direct fire support, they'll probably stick to the versatility of the 30 to 40 mil autocannons.
Yeah, I just want to address some of the comments that have been coming in the last few minutes. Alan asked, what's the Ajax 40mm? And if the British can make it work, the Ajax 40mm could be a better gun if it works. and in particular, it's a telescoped round, so that the projectile is fully encased by the propellant, and it's got a lot of smart capabilities for doing things like airbursts in interesting ways. Ajax's gun is great. The rest of the vehicle has let them down, and frankly, they probably should have put the gun in the CV-90. Moving on, Tasman's noted that Australia went with the Redback from South Korea. I don't think. Well, there's not a lot of snow here. I guess where we.
I was about to say we want something that goes longer distances. Mainly, it's probably one of the big things for us.
Russ has noted that CV reminds him of Warrior. Warrior is certainly a venerable British IFE, but getting.
And look, if Ajax evolves into a good machine, I'd love to see it, but I don't think anybody's expecting that to happen. I
just think the issue is the Ascot chassis.
They made a mess of the bed, and nobody wants to believe that they'll clean it up well.
Yeah, my understanding is the Ascot chassis, which is a well proven chassis, but in the 20-ton weight range, is just not handling the 40-ton weight range of everything they bolted onto it. But I am not an expert, and I don't have any classified insight. So,
all right. At the moment, countries know what an IFE does and what it doesn't do, and they are happy with that. Once you start making them have to have a light or medium tank, then you need to have the political will of dealing with the fallout of sending a lightly armoured vehicle against proper tanks and AGGMs. Now, having mentioned BAE Hägglund's propaganda a fair bit, I do like to want to say that their promotion material, they point out that all their CV-90 projects are delivered on time, and they have not been involved in any contractual court cases for the CV-90 projects. And if that's true, that's not a bad record to have.
It's a good one to advertise.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
We don't litigate our customers is a great thing for a CEO to be able to say.
And we produce on time. So that's a lot of countries would love if their military contractors could do that.
Yeah, but I mean, you're right that all the videos that I've seen on YouTube about this, which is one but not our only source for these videos, is it's just like, it provides greater lethality at better ranges, and it's really it's not particularly useful. It kills people, and I'm sorry,
you're wondering. Anyway, in the media, it makes its way into the background of a few films. Black Crab, Alien Outpost, or Outpost 37 it's called. In 2009 film Nord, there is a short action sequence of the CV-90 in the snow. In the 2018 Swedish Kickstarter film, The Unthinkable, a CV-9040 appears in a rainy background scene as the Swedes deal with a strange chemical attacks launched by an unknown adversary.
I love that an indie film managed to.
It's actually quite highly rated. I looked at it and said, "Yep, it was a Kickstarter film," and then it's got it was one of the highest watched films in Sweden in the year, and there might have been a little propaganda piece of Vladimir Putin at the end of it, saying who was sending out the strange chemical attacks. All right, our poll CV-90 is the shiny future.
53%. Some weird Nordic thing is in at 20, and just another IFE at 27. I feel I really should offer three options going forward. But yes, and so people are impressed. Shiny future, we love it.
Alrighty. So we're going to go forward with that. We're going to have a quick break to chat with our mate Dr. Albert about stuff.
So the most viewed thing we've ever made was our last chat with Dr. Albert Pallazo about Australia's infantry fighting vehicles. In this one, we're going to talk about his book from a couple of years ago about climate change and national security. It's pretty depressing stuff, but stick with us, and we're going to come back and do some current events, and then we're going to go through the mailbag of your comments in the last year. So there's
as a Christmas treat.
As a Christmas treat, there's lots to look forward to. Do stick with us through. There's just a lot of things people need to understand in the next chat, and we hope you appreciate it.
Yeah, and jump in the poll and let us know what you think about the CV-90.
Cool. Back in 30 minutes.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Totally Tank. Tonight we're talking to Dr. Albert Pallazo. Once again, joining us. Last time we were talking about the infantry fighting vehicle. This time we're talking about climate change and the wars and how it's going to affect the world as we know it with defense and industry and everything else. Albert, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Yes, I'm good. Yeah, looking forward to chatting.
Now, the book the paper you've got up online from the. Do you want to hold up that document again from Army Press? This is published by the Climate Change and National Security. Now, it's a bit of an eye-opening thing about implications for the military about how climate change is going to affect everything. So whether it's the fact that Newport News, the biggest naval base in America, is going to be flooded by about 2050 because they're only 10 feet above sea level, and they're subsiding into the ocean, and the surging tides are coming up, and so suddenly the biggest naval base in America is going to get flooded, or the Air Force bases in Alaska are having to freeze the ground underneath them because the permafrost is melting, so that the bases don't actually sink into the ground and that sort of fun stuff. What else can you tell us about what's going on?
Well, I'll only approach it from the national security point of view, because as everyone should now accept that climate change is happening and it's real, and our failure to put in any meaningful policies to cut back on greenhouse gas emissions to rapidly reduce to its zero, basically dooms humanity to a very tough ride in the coming decades. And I mean, we could say Australia has failed in that necessity to reduce greenhouse gases, as have the prime producers of these gases, the United States, China, India, and the European Union. And even though
Speaking
they
of
keep talking,
speaking of
and even though
Australia, I
they
just
keep
want to sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of Australia, I just want to pull out the quote you've got in there saying, within the Five Eyes community of English-speaking nations comprised of the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, the Australian military has been laggard in considering climate change from the perspective of national security, with the Department of Defence has not issued a single climate change report, and its most recent 2016 white paper made only a passing reference to the subject. In the face of government growing international concerns, Australia's 2020 Defence Strategic Update went backward and gave climate change a single mention. That's a kind of a damning indictment of what the Australian military is doing, and saying it's a really large country. We're getting really hot, and I hope
Yeah,
everything your vehicles can survive
and
55 degrees.
and I'm afraid it hasn't got any better. In the 2023 Defense Strategic Review, they now give an entire page out of a 100+ page document. Most of the pages are dealing with China. The one page on climate change basically says it's not our responsibility. Other agencies will have to put out the fires and deal with potential flooding, and it's not our job. We don't want to do this.
Even though the
And
Australian government relies upon the military to sort out
yes,
bushfires, flooding, and everything else, they're saying, well, it's not our job. So maybe the Australian government,
yes,
anyway.
and in one sense, the military is correct. Um, you know, aid to the civil community is not their primary task. People join the military, or the military exists for fighting and winning the nation's wars. The military doesn't exist to put out bushfires. And using a soldier to put out a bushfire is a very expensive proposition, because even the ordinary basic private infantry person is $1 million worth of training going into that person. So we want a larger SCS. We want a national based emergency response organization. We don't want to use the military for this. But good luck ADF getting out of the job, because when the crisis comes, as it does every couple of years, or comes every year, the government's going to turn to them, and they're going to still be used for that purpose, which is a real shame and a distraction, because, as I just said, the primary purpose of the military is to wage war and win the nation's conflicts. And
Yeah,
what
Al.
the other
Sorry, Albert.
and
I
the
just want to quickly jump in on you there. Your book was quite bleak in 2022, and that's not a reflection on you; it's a reflection on the subject matter. But since 2022, we've really taken quite a jagged turn for the worse in the UK. Its commitment on climate change, which had been quite good, has gone to water. Australia had a new government coming in that we thought would do some things, but we've only expanded fossil fuel extraction. And while Australia is a very small producer of climate change gases, we export an enormous amount of fossil fuel. We're one of the leading exporters. And of course, Trump has been elected, who claims he doesn't believe in climate change and will reverse all of Joe Biden's quite good initiatives. So I guess we're now very much looking at the worst case scenario, and the book was already pretty bleak. How do you feel about that veering off?
well, as you know, John, I'm a pretty blunt kind of guy, and I've been looking at this issue for more than a decade now, looking at it from the national security perspective, and not just for Australian national security, but what it means for nations in general. And I think I take no pleasure in saying this, but we've now reached a point where we have to expect that several billion people over the next few decades are simply going to die from climate change events. And that's probably, since we're not doing much to rein in greenhouse gases, since the temperature is now already 1.5 degrees centigrade higher, and it's going to easily go through 2 degrees and perhaps even continue going higher, the effect on many of the nations, many of the countries on the planet will be catastrophic. And when that occurs, when countries keep getting hammered by climate change events, whether they be fires, cyclones, flooding, drought,
Drought.
now it doesn't matter. The end point of all this is that many states are not prepared. They do not have the resiliency, they do not have the systems in place that can allow them to manage their populations, provide what their populations need through a ongoing crisis,
I mean,
which means a lot of
a lot of people don't even realize that the Syrian civil war starting in 2012 was all about climate change because of huge droughts
yeah.
forcing displacement of people. And suddenly that's what sort of kicked it all off. And I remember people laughing at then Prince Charles saying climate change has caused this war. And he was exactly right. Now King Charles.
Yeah.
But people just don't want to address the issue that it's going to happen, and people are going to get displaced, and movement's going to happen. It's going to change things.
Yeah, and we're still not realistic about what this means to most of humanity. And this is, of course, the billions of people who live north and south of the equator, known as the global south, who are generally poor, whose states lack resources, and whose governments are not very strong or able to implement resiliency. And the people in these countries are in grave peril because when their governments collapse and their food production systems fail, they're looking at starvation, the widespreadness of the return of major life-threatening epidemics and other systems collapses that will result in the deaths of billions of people. Now, that's I say it that frankly because this is the consequence of our inattention or inability to manage this problem. And because we now have another COP meeting going on in Azerbaijan, and the expectations are minimal. And I don't, at this point, I don't even know why we bother anymore because, people do a lot of talking and there's not much in the way of action. And
Especially
so
when they
what
say
I've,
that oil is given to us by God, and therefore they must drill, drill, drill type thing. It's
yeah,
just it's a bit
and
disingenuous.
so the reason why I wrote this book that the U.S. Army, published, is that I'm looking at it for what does this mean? What does climate change mean specifically for the military? And what does the future, which is one of going to be much more chaotic, destabilized, and involving a lot more violence, going to be for the people, the men and women who serve their countries? And of course, I'm thinking, particularly of what does this mean for the Australian Defence Force, and the men and women who wear the uniform and are in charge of protecting our country. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of thinking going on around this, because our political leaders who have not done much to address climate change in Australia and who are still authorizing the opening of new mines and the drilling for natural gas, all the things you shouldn't be doing, um, they are fixated on the threat of China to Australia. That is what
And
they're building the Australian Defence Force to do, is to counter the China threat.
yeah, and especially if you're going to do that drilling and digging and everything else and selling off those the coal and the gas from Australia, getting the dollars to the government to be able to use to build the infrastructure that you might need to be resilient against military or climate change threats would be very useful. But instead, the government is saying, okay, multinational gas and coal companies, you can have all the money, and we're not going to take any of it for the Australians themselves. So it's a little bit of
Yes,
a
our fossil fuel tax policy is, let me just be
Poor.
polite, it's misguided. Um, so but the military, and I don't want to fault them here because they take signal from the government, and the government is telling them prepare for war for China. We're buying all this equipment at enormous expense so that you're in a position to fight China. They're not doing it to protect the country from climate change events, and they're not doing it to protect other states in our region from climate change events where the military might be involved. And so it's a different mindset. So they're not thinking about it. They're not thinking about the implications of climate change for violence, and they're certainly not preparing for it. And because the government isn't interested in climate change events, the military can't prepare for it. The military, is preparing for war with China because that's what they're told to do, and correctly so. That's what they're preparing for. Unfortunately, this is placing all your capabilities in a basket that has no utility for climate change catastrophes. I struggle to understand what a nuclear powered submarine is going to do to help the people of New Guinea cope with massive cyclones.
luckily enough, we don't think we'll ever have to worry about that because we don't think we'll ever get them.
Well, that's a possibility.
We're
But
going to spend a lot of money on them, but I don't think we'll ever get them.
yes, yes. But the other problem here is at the moment, a lot of the Navy's thinking and intellectual activity and planning is being taken up. You have only a finite amount of planning time and intelligence, and it's being consumed by what are we going to do with these nuclear powered submarines? I
Yeah,
expect if they ever do arrive, we're not going to do anything with them.
it's a really interesting one because, I mean, here in Canberra, we had huge bushfires in 2003, and while the Army and the Navy don't like to think aid to civil power is their job, it was the Army who rebuilt the bridges that had been burned out, and it was the Navy helicopters that darkened the skies to firebomb to bring that fire under control.
We won't mention the fires that the Army helicopters started in 2019.
That's a different one. But also when these island nations throughout the Pacific start disappearing under the waves, the Navy is going to be expected to evacuate people. They might not want to do that or plan for it, but they're definitely going to be told to go and do it when it happens.
And if it's not the Australian Navy, it'll be the Chinese Navy.
Yeah.
Yes, and those island states are going to go underwater. I mean, there's this is dealing with the tyranny of science. As sea levels rise, land gets submerged, and so at some point, a lot of states will either disappear. Now, fortunately, the populations of these island countries is fairly small, and so it's a manageable problem. Australia on its own could absorb everyone, from Tonga to Vanuatu, and bring them to Australia, and make them part of our community. So it's not, we're not dealing with enormous numbers. But when you look at other regional states nearby, such as Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and then the rest of Southeast Asia, we're looking at tremendous numbers of people. And a lot of these people, they're not going to, go quietly, which at the moment seems to be the plan. We'll just, expect them to, go quietly into the night. I expect that, we're looking at a future in which there's lots of violence in our region, in the surrounding region as these states destabilize. And the government's going to have to make some decisions. And amongst the decisions is, do we get involved internally in these states in order to stabilize them, to prop them up? Do we get involved to prevent warring factions from overwhelming the countries? And do we get involved in mitigating mass migration? And these are decisions that the government will have to make. And at the moment, that requires a different equipment skill set than what we're buying, particularly amongst the Navy. And it's not just the nuclear-powered submarines. There's also the Hunter-class frigate, the follow-on frigates, the offshore patrol vessels. The Navy is basically buying everything that is wrong for the future that is most likely. And if we look at the future, to the extent that we can predict, the threat of China is a maybe. The threat of climate change is guaranteed. And I, for one, would prefer to prepare, for the guaranteed threat and mitigate the maybe through diplomacy, through industrial, policy, through cultural policy, because we're all in the same basket and we're all facing climate change. And that would be the way, I would think, to bring, a satisfactory relationship between Australia and China and between the United States and China, because we're all going to have to deal with it. And unfortunately,
a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to spend all the money on the military that you need to, that you think you need to. You can divert some of that money towards diplomatic and trade and everything else to say, well, why would these people want to go to war with us? We provide them everything they need, and they're our best trade partners and everything else, which China is our biggest trade partner for Australia. So it really becomes an issue of better diplomacy means that less likely to have a confrontation.
But for whatever reason, over the last couple of decades, the Australian government, and this is, whatever the political party and whatever the leader is in, they have downgraded foreign affairs and trade as a department and have, favored defense. And defense has become the main reaction to crises that might emerge, whereas much of this should be handled by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and DFAT should be the lead in providing for the nation's security. And that, may sound strange, but as you just said, diplomacy, the purpose of diplomacy is to provide for national security, right? By holding discussions with other countries and coming to an arrangement, an agreement, without the need for violence. And
It's
people used to
sorry.
say that you only resorted to violence when diplomacy failed. But we've given up on diplomacy. We just go straight to the military.
Yeah, it also strikes me. I mean, we're talking about the movement of the peoples, which is normally the end of civilization historically. It's no small risk, and I really do wonder just what the displaced peoples of Southeast Asia are going to think of the Anglo outpost that decided to burn all the coal and gas to enrich fossil fuel companies.
Think of the end of the Bronze Age and the movement of the Sea Peoples, Sean.
Well, yeah, or the end of the Roman Empire. Yeah, but there aren't many pretty parallels to look at.
No. End of the Bronze Age. Yeah, I like that one.
Yes. And this is what the government is not realizing, because of climate change, the security situation with climate change, is that the government's main or primary rationale for existing, the reason why Australians bother to have a government, is to provide for security. And they're failing to address the most important and most decisive threat to Australian security, which is climate change. And we have people, we have very senior military people in the United States, in the UK, saying things like climate change is an existential threat, as does the United Nations. They accept it as an existential threat. But it's as if the Australian government doesn't understand the term existential threat. It's supposed to get your attention, and it's simply not getting there. And I think at the moment it's largely because climate change isn't a political problem for our political leaders, and until it becomes one, until they feel personally threatened by the issue, they won't really treat it with the respect and importance it deserves. So
yeah, to bring us back to a tank podcast idea, what do you think would be the best tank in a climate change affected world? How's that for a stumper?
Well,
electric, a hydrogen, an amphibious?
It's we just pause for a moment.
No worries.
Yes, and for other fun facts from Albert's document, the book that he wrote, was that in 2017, Hurricane Michael hit Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, ripping its hangars apart and destroying 17 F-22 Raptors, each costing more than $300 million a pop US. That's a huge cost just from a hurricane going through the Florida Panhandle, and which is going to happen more and more often. And before, when I was talking about, I think I said Newport News, what I actually meant was Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia. So the big naval base there, with another one up the road. Sorry, you're back.
Yes. So you asked about what kind of tank you would need. Now, it's not a trivial question, because, as tanks are fairly complex pieces of equipment, and since the invention of the tank back in the First World War, they've always balanced three things: armor, firepower, and mobility. And the world has only gotten more dangerous on the firepower side, so it's still going to have to be a heavily protected, both electronically and passively defended, piece of kit. And so I think the areas where you're going to see sacrifices is perhaps in the gun, for a lighter piece of armor, or perhaps, no longer designing the tank to fight another tank, but designing it as more of an infantry support vehicle, but a heavily armored one, unlike the ones we're getting, and still with a degree of mobility.
So the
Because
Chinese T-15, we want to say, or the American M10 Booker?
well, the Booker is looking, reasonably good to fit that role, because there are now other ways to deal with an enemy tank, and as you know, no Australian tank has ever fired a shot at a hostile tank. It's just has never happened. We use it as an infantry support vehicle, and perhaps that should be our main focus. Because if the Australian government decides to send us into a regional partner's territory, or a regional partner asks for military assistance, the army is going to need tanks. You're not going to send soldiers into a hostile battle space without protective armor. Not without expecting a lot of them to die, which, that could be the outcome. But you're going to need some kind of heavily armored vehicle. Whether that is an Abrams, well, that's a different question. And the Abrams was bought for very specific reasons, because, we wanted what the Americans had and what
Makes us
their
less
main
likely,
battle
as
tank
John
was.
keeps saying, makes us less likely to get shot by the Americans if we're driving their tanks.
Yes. So
It helps. Every little bit helps.
yes, but the same thing with all other kinds of equipment. They're going to have to be optimized, for not for naval warfare, which is what we're doing now. We need to be optimized for fighting on the land against masses of people, in very dangerous situations, because people are going to get very desperate as climate change worsens. And desperate people, do what it takes to survive. And that generally means, a lot of violence. And, we're not prepared for that future. We're still stuck in this age where, the ADS mentality is that, we have total battle space clarity, we have air power supremacy, we can drop bombs, and maybe we'll lose one or two guys or gals, but basically it's just bad guys that die. Well, I don't see that in the future wars. I mean, we're going back to a much more dangerous environment, and our ADF is just not thinking or preparing for that kind of future. We're preparing to be a colonial part, a colonial contingent, helping the Americans in a war with China, which just doesn't seem like the future for me, or it doesn't seem like a future you would want, and which you would want to avoid through diplomatic initiatives.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously the Chinese naval buildup is very real, and they're not spending all that money for nothing. But as you note, avoiding that conflict would be the smartest thing we could do. And yeah, I mean, even just within Australia, if we're talking, in 50 years, the polar ice sheets are gone. That's a 90-meter sea level rise. That's the whole populations of Sydney and Melbourne internally displaced as a
Yep.
nation.
Canberra, on the other hand, is one of the most resilient cities for climate change. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but when
Yes,
the populations of Sydney and Melbourne come up the road looking for shelter and food, it's going to get tricky.
Yes, it would be a good idea for the government to perhaps start dedicating some thinking and some resources to building resilience. They've allowed the crisis to come, and now they need to, the only way to, we can't solve it, we can't prevent it, so we have to mitigate it. And whenever I fly, up to Brisbane and I pass over the Gold Coast, I look down at all those people living on their canals, and I think, where are they going to be living in 20 years? Like, I can't see them living there.
Yeah, we have not done a good job of looking after the Lismore flood victims either, which was a pretty small catastrophe.
All righty. I think we might look to wrap it up there. Albert, is there anything you want to, final words you want to provide us? Look, and I want to say that while it's pretty bleak and dark looking forward, there are opportunities for us if people start making the hard choices and stop saying, bowing down to the cultures that have been there and done that and just want to maintain the status quo. So we have to actually start making some changes, my thoughts. But I'll leave it up to you to finish it off.
Yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right, Rob. The status quo cannot be the future. We're looking at a different world, and so we need a different future. And it's fundamental as that, because if you continue insisting that the world is changing, but we don't have to, well, then you're gonna probably die. And I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm just saying that's the reality. When you make the wrong decisions in a crisis, the outcome is generally unfavorable to your existence. And so our government needs to start, treating climate change with the respect and the fear it deserves. And unfortunately, so far, we see nothing like that happening.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Albert.
Yeah, John, Rob, it's a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to chatting again.
Thanks to Albert for joining us again. It was good catching up with him at the pub the other night where John and I saw him, where he gave us a talk about how Australia shouldn't sleepwalk into our way into a war with China just because America wants to balance the trade deficit. You can find his book, Climate Change and National Security Implications for the Military, online at armyupress.army.mil as a free read.
And it will be in the comments on any place you're seeing this. I just want to note that, yes, we were in the pub with Albert on Thursday night. It was the first time I'd actually met him in person. And yeah, Canberra is that smaller place, but it kind of works like a university campus sometimes, that people can cross-pollinate ideas in interesting ways. Just before we move on, as a bit of personal biography, I just want to get this off my chest. I spent 8 years involved in environmental politics starting in 2016. 4 of those as a volunteer and 4 as at my actual day job, which I took quite a significant pay cut to do. After 8 years, I'm just at the point where, we failed. We tried, but we failed. And in, as Dr. Pallazo just said, billions of people are going to die as a result, and hardly anyone is going to benefit but a very small number of fossil fuel company shareholders and a bunch of Middle Eastern princes, and it's very disappointing. I do remember in 2022 turning to my boss and saying if we were having any success making change, they'd have killed us by now, and she sort of sadly patted me on the head.
See, I'm a bit more positive about the future, but that could just be the beer talking. And I just want to give a shout out to Udon Dave for saying he's going to go grab another beer because he found Albert's talk a little bit sobering as well. So good on him. So from that, we're going to go into the beer review. Yes, have you finished?
No, we're doing the patrons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Patrons.
Yeah.
And then we're going to the beer review. Don't worry, boys and girls, there is beer involved.
Yeah. Our participants here, and they get the interview early and the ad-free video and audio of the show, are Brian Jenkins, Chris Pezet, Cornelius Weber, Jonathan Markle, Johnny Oot, Maxi Mixed, and Pear. And our apprentice tier, who get the show ad-free, are Anton Gorbanov, Carter Heller, Christoph Keller, David Mulvaney, Elliot Spicer, Flody Berb, Gihuk, Hans Wang, Henry Hemmer, Jay Beckman-Strauss, Jamie Stokes, Late Apex, Martin, Russell Phillips, Scotch 12, Steve Matthews, and Tony L. Now, Rob, do you want to explain the Patreon situation?
I have no idea. I don't do Apple things.
Okay, so basically, if you want to sign up as a patron, do it on the website, not through the Apple app. Otherwise,
I'm an Android man.
Otherwise, Apple will keep more of the money, and I'm sure Google will start doing that soon. Okay, so there we go. Back into the second half of the show. Beer review. What have you got for us, Rob?
It's something slightly associated with CV-90s, the Royal Dutch Extra Smooth, a tribute to Coastbourne Brewery.
I've never had so much trouble opening a beer in my life, Rob. There we go. There we go. Royal Dutch, established 1806, which is not a golden era of brewery founding.
Imported quality. That's what they're telling us.
Oh, imported quality. Right.
Yep.
I mean,
nice big silver bullets.
Dutch,
4.3%.
Dutch beer is mostly notable for its cheapness, but we'll get the Dutchies coming at us now.
So I'm assuming it's a 500 ml.
But
can.
I always like a 500 ml can. Although
it is a 500 ml can.
These glasses are struggling with it. But cheers.
Cheers, indeed.
Mm.
Premium lager.
Now, while we're absorbing this before we review it, Oz Armour Fest 2025. We're still saying we are planning to be there, and we would love as many of you who can make it as possible. You will get to ride around in tanks. That's not us related. That's the Australian Museum of Artillery and Armour do the rides. But we will guarantee we will have nights in the pub every night of the festival. And
there will be beer involved as well.
There'll be a lot of beer. There'll be a lot of conversations. There'll be a lot of talking crap, and
you'll probably be home by 10 p.m. to be able to get a good night's sleep to be able to go out and ride tanks.
Ride more tanks.
Yeah, and drink more beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. And it's in Cairns, which is a lovely place in Northern Australia.
On the Great Barrier Reef, there's lots of other things to do if you're booking for a week in Cairns and you're travelling to be there.
Yeah, exactly. There is a lovely rainforest, Daintree is up there, and all sorts of fun stuff going on. Anyway, what do we think? It's what do
you know what? As a cheap lager goes, I hope it was cheap. It's a good lager in a big can.
It's a good lager in a big can. Yeah,
it's nice and cold.
It's got a certain flavour to it that I'm not sure.
I think it's what we call noble hops in the industry.
There you go.
Which just means the hops you use in lager. But anyway, I'm liking it. I could drink more of it. If someone brought a case of it over.
Well, there's another can, so we'll be having that later.
All right, nice one.
Yeah, so as we said, Oz Armour Fest is the last weekend in August 2025. I want to say 26 to 29 of August, but yeah, something around there. But we'll be up there. We'll be having some fun, and we'll be riding around in tanks. And maybe even making some videos and talking to people.
We'll definitely be making videos. We'll definitely be talking to anyone who wants to talk to us,
Yeah.
which can be a small group. We have been told to watch our backs, but I'm not sure if that's this one or Tank Fest of Bovington.
Who knows?
We'll get to comments later.
Now we're going on to Strike Master on Bushmaster.
Yes.
But when are we going to get the Master Blaster?
Well, they missed an opportunity here with that naming, didn't they?
I know. So Strike Master is a new, Australia's looking to get truck-launched 250-kilometre range Strike Master missiles rather than the more expensive Lockheed Martin-produced HIMARS, which everyone thinks is the bee's knees. But Defence is worried about the high cost. We're already seeing defence programs cut to pay for the subs that we're never going to get. And lack of sovereignty with the US-made technology, i.e. Orange Man might say no. He's not selling these things off because he needs them all for himself. And the long acquisition times given to numerous other nations have ordered the HIMARS. So we might be long down the list of who gets what and who's paying how much for it. Because Australian governments are surprisingly bad at negotiating contracts for getting things because we just say, we just like to be included, I feel like. And surprisingly, the missiles would be built, the new Strike Master missiles would be built in the electorate of the Defence Industry Minister. Who could have guessed that?
Well, Rob, I'm sure he was suitably recused from all decision making, and it's completely above board. I also want to note these Strike Master packages are bolted onto a Bushmaster, which is meant to be a troop carrying truck, and I'm all for vehicle commonality and chassis commonality, but we're buying a lot of other weird stuff like Boxer and Hawkeye. And then it's like, so we've lost that commonality anyway. And I do think MRAP protection is not needed on a missile carrier because you're not taking them into contested counterinsurgency situations. So that's problematic. The other thing is these are meant to carry naval strike missiles. And basically the Army wants to get into the naval strike game because obviously the Navy is already in naval strike, and the Air Force in Australia does a lot of naval strike between the Super Hornets and the P8s, which, the 737s modified for naval warfare. So the Army wants to get in, but what the hell a truck sitting in a bush block somewhere near the coast is meant to contribute because it can't see the ships 250 kilometres out to sea. So it's the targeting is a problem, and even if someone is giving them a coordinate of a blip on a radar, it's like, who have you checked if that's a fishing boat or a cruise ship?
I think their job is just to push the button and let somebody else figure out those bits.
Yeah, it's
Once you're mainly on the back of trucks, it's no longer you're taking it out of the strategic realm and putting it into the operational / tactical realm and saying, yeah, you just push the button, buddy.
But this comes back to the issue that, yes, you can put a naval strike missile on a truck and you can park it somewhere near the coast and it can be given a targeting solution and fire, but something has to go out there and find and identify the target in the first place, and it's almost always a better idea. I know we're a long way off tanks here, we're well out at sea. It's almost always a better idea to put the missile on the vehicle that's going out to look, naval theory has been evolving this way for a very long time. Having a truck that could, in theory, fire a missile if anyone told it where to fire is...
but that's what satellites are for, unless it's cloudy.
Unless it's cloudy. Or you're not looking in the right place, because the sea is quite large.
Is it? Is it really? It's 70% of the world? I mean, yeah. Anyway,
yes.
Syria.
Yes, so things have gone to hell in Syria very quickly. Everyone thought that conflict was
a bit
quieter, but no, it turned out that when you blow the thumbs and balls off all of the Hezbollah leadership, you'll see the Al-Qaeda offshoot supported by the Turks rampaging across the countryside.
Plus, there are free tanks available sitting on the roadsides outside Aleppo and Homs and all sorts of other places where
the Syrian army just left them.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's great YouTube videos of people saying, here's me in front of this tank. It's been abandoned, and I'm just going to climb into it and start it up and drive it away. And that's what they do.
Now, Alexander Vlad, a good friend of the show, has joined us.
Welcome back.
Yes, just want to say, he says we've got to do an episode about tentacles. Our T-55 episode does have a legit interview with a former T-55 commander in Syria. So if you wanted to have a view of the Kurdish side of that things and how you steal a tank, strongly recommend if you haven't listened to that episode already.
That's not a Hilux, though.
It's not, but it's a T-55, man. It's an actual tank. Anyway, my point largely...
he's talking about the TR-85 that he's saying thanks for us, the Romanian bit.
We've already got his comment thanking us for that coming up. Yeah. So I was saving that.
All right. Martial
Anyway.
Law in South Korea.
Yes.
Wasn't that fun?
Yeah, that was unexpected.
Nobody saw that this week.
And the reason I just threw this in there is that what's coming out is that the South Korean troops who were brought onto the streets by their president's weird declaration of martial law to fight an unspecified threat, they were lied to and told that the North Koreans were attacking, and that that's why they were being mobilized and sent out. And this is a problem that, dare I say it, all militaries around the world are going to face, is verifying whether the civilian government or a part of the civilian government is telling them the correct things. And this is not necessarily tank related, although tanks are involved, a big problem. And I think we'll just move on from that at that point, because no one actually understands what the hell happened there.
No, but the main thing is that it very quickly got turned around and...
But you can only do that in a country that's very small geographically, because...
unless Parliament's actually sitting.
Yeah, but all the parliamentarians were able to get to the building and start voting this thing down.
Yeah. Right, before they got arrested by the military.
Yeah, and start making phone calls to military leaders saying, are you really doing this? And they were like, no, we thought the North Koreans were attacking. Okay, and also the French government has collapsed, and France has a lot of problems. And anything particularly tank related you got there, Rob, other than...
well, there's no tractors involved in filling up the streets, so but basically they just Macron's got to find a compromise buddy prime minister, put him forward or put them forward and see if they can, whether or not they'll end up with they've just gone from a centrist government, whether or not they'll end up with a left-wing government supported by the centrists, or whether they'll end up with a right-wing government with Marine Le Pen's right-wing government as prime minister supported by the centrists. Who knows?
I mean, France has a big problem in that their polity is divided between the left and the right, but Macron, as a centrist, basically appointed by the finance industry, is...
the prime minister was trying to bring in austerity measures and cut the budget by $60 billion, and basically by using emergency powers and which includes the clause that they're allowed to the Parliament is allowed to, or whatever they're called, is allowed to ask for a no confidence motion,
The Assembly.
and they did, and he didn't get by. So that's why he got
But
out.
he never had the numbers. He was lucky to survive as long as he did, because fundamentally Macron ignored the left, which has most of the numbers in the Assembly.
It's better. It's a 1/3 split between from a very casual glance at it. It's a 1/3 split between the left, centre, and right. But the good thing is that they can just keep on governing as a caretaker government without making any new laws or anything else. But they can keep on paying people. The government, it hasn't actually collapsed. It's just saying, well, we've got a problem. We've got to figure it out. We've got time. We don't actually have to make any emergency decisions unless we really want to.
Now, let's move on to the bit everyone's been waiting for.
Comments from the crowd / letters to the editor.
Now, we did ask the patrons if they wanted to be involved, and two of them responded. So Anton Gorbanov sent in, "Hey guys, love the work you're doing. You'll make a few hours out of my workday that much better. Please continue staying as unbiased and awesome as you are. And
Thank you.
Maybe you could do a standalone podcast about the mouse at some point. Is my favourite tank and has a fascinating history." Yes to all of that.
Yep.
Yes.
As I said, we've done our super heavy Allied tanks. Now, one day we'll be doing the super heavy Axis tanks.
And in terms of bias, obviously no one is free of bias. We do our best to be reality based, and we know that upsets some people, and that's okay. They're not here. Yeah. All right. Chris Pezze said, "Yes, I want to be included." Here you are, Chris. I'm assuming ABBA will make an appearance. We weirdly left ABBA out of the CV-90, but
ABBA has a strangely strong place in Australian culture, though.
It does. I mean, they were the birth of 4-chord power pop, and they deserve a place for that.
But I was about to say they have a stronger connection to Australia than a lot of other places in the world.
Yeah, well, we go crazy for pop. I mean, Beatles as well.
I mean, I'm there, baby.
Let's talk now. Going through, we had our old AMX 13 episode had a recent comment. Walrus 2847 felt the need to say the Hood was a battleship in all but name, indeed was the progenitor of the fast battleship, the armour of contemporary battleships. And it's like, yeah, but the point we were trying to make, going way, way back, is that you put a light armoured vehicle on the battlefield and generals will use it like every other armoured thing. And Hood was destroyed in Denmark Strait because it was put in a position that its armour couldn't handle.
I feel that if we get any more battleship-related comments, that we're going to be here all night. So
we're moving on from that. We're moving on.
We're not after a right of reply, John.
We're going to do replies, Rob. Anytime you feel that you got a reply, you just let it out there.
All right.
These buggers don't get in the show without getting replied to. All right. So
Half-Life APC 8777.
This is on the Leclerc.
This episode aged like a fine French wine, especially in regard to the Houthis.
Now, I'm going to assume given that French wine is generally considered to age well, that this is saying our episode aged well. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's how I read it.
Let's go with that. Now, the video on the Murrayville tank graveyard. Uncle Steve said, unguarded in America, they would have been stolen for scrap metal a long time ago. LMAO. P.S. Love the video. You guys seem to be a lot like the blokes I sprouted up with. Love from America. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Thank you, Steve.
All right. And Marcus Shanes 843 said, I see a pair of M3 Lees and a Matilda. I think there's a facility in Australia that restores World War II tanks and displays them. When I watch this vid with the old rusted out scrap tanks, I think the scene looks apocalyptic, like something out of a Mad Max movie. There's nothing out there but old scrap and junk. You forgot the snakes. Good vid. Greetings from the US. There's plenty of snakes.
Hurricane Daniel did let us know. He's talked to the owner of these tanks in 2021. Back then, she wished to inform people that they were owned by her and her father and now her. They are not a collection, nor do they like people going onto their land. Her father brought them to cut the arm plate off to build items. They were not bought to be turned into tractors. Which is probably why they're still in good condition. But yes,
Clayton and the model tank. Oh, sorry, this is Captivate them. Talking about Clayton and the model tanks. Putting ERA and the cope cage on his model T-34s and Tigers to upset one friend who sometimes comes by and is a little bit autistic, and enough to notice changes to them in the display case. This is a really lovely interview, lads. Excited to see what you have in the autoloader for the new year.
All right. And Racksnake said, good content, bloke. So thank you for that. Now, when we launched the new intro video, we had some comments there.
My love for the new intro is sponsored by TR85. You know you want to do it. We have
Rocket Dude 99 said, been listening to you since 2022, and I just learned you guys had an intro video since I just listened and never watched the streams or videos. Well, I'm glad you got there in the end.
All right. Talking Tigers with the Tank Archive from Pavs Islam 5543. I think that if you take a person that knows nothing about tanks, tell them to draw one, about 90% of them would draw something like a T-55 with a simple pentagon-shaped hull profile and a hemispherical turret. I agree.
We could actually do a project on getting people to draw what they think a tank looks like, but I agree that would be a popular one. Yep. Now, we're getting into our episodes. The T-64, we had... Open Sovic, just watching the part where you call the Azov Brigade Nazis. This is hilarious, but the whole episode is very good and precise in the details. P.S. Why Russian Tsar hasn't any trouble with Sweden and Finland joining NATO? It's their western borders of Russia. Anyway, so a Ukraine enthusiast there. That's fine.
Forgotten Armour with Jack Bauscher from Medi833. Always a great show, even though I do not always agree. Great guest, and we'll be getting the book. There was a driving course in Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, that was called the Burma Road, and it was the scariest driving course I've ever experienced. Luckily, I was a very experienced driver and knew the balance of the M60A3 well. I wonder how the author feels about a comparison with Russia's Manchuria armor operations.
We should possibly ask them. Anyway, we don't expect everyone to always agree with us, and
over
time we would disagree with each other. But
I mean, look, guys, we're not experts. We're happy to share our opinions and let other people share theirs because
we are enthusiasts.
Yes.
The Ontros episode.
The beer makes us do it.
Brandon makes stuff. Still on the line, Brandon. Anyway, said, I think this would be one of the most fun tanks to own. It basically has 6 giant potato guns or blunderbusses for all kinds of activities. I actually have 2 flechettes from this rifle in my eyebrow. So we'll get stuff, Brandon.
I'm not sure how that happened. Did you headbutt it and keep it up? All right, the T80 episode from Tom Bird 320. Nice info on the T80, but as I have noticed, your episodes are becoming more and more bloated with John's political opinions. Stick to tanks, guys. Why don't my political opinions not come across?
I feel like we've added more of your political opinions in the last year, Rob, so hopefully they're happier that there are just more political opinions. And we do have a series of Tanks Are Always Political T-shirts now on the Redbubble store, which are getting increasing sales. It's very nice.
Oh, I definitely got them. From Ian Noodlings. I love the podcast on Spotify. The T80 is truly a staple tank in modern conflict. I would ask what the main methods are for your guys' research for such a long-winded presentation such as this. Currently, I'm putting together a presentation for myself for a university about the defensive capabilities of the T80 from a statistical perspective. I've done some looking myself, but I would be interested to hear your insight on the main battle tank research and public records. We kind of make it up as we go along.
Well, so we look at the Wikipedia, we look at the sources, the Wikipedia sites, we look at Tank Encyclopedia a lot, we look at what's on YouTube by other people, and then we also have a significant base of knowledge that we are coming from. And then if there are things that are hazy, which is always a warning sign, we look into those. If you're wondering, but we are entirely open source and do not ever draw on classified material.
That would be fun, though, wouldn't it? No.
We're not a War Thunder forum.
No, we're not a War Thunder. But yes, we have fun, which basically it's something we enjoy. We like to study up on it and put together, and then we get to talk about it and drink beer and hang out with all of you and us. Janes, I don't know. I do look at Janes every once in a while, but I haven't looked at.
Janes is expensive.
Well, I do have an account of work that I can look into.
You should.
I should. As I said, I look at it every once in a while.
Let's move on.
All right. Yasha Ashaya, 7055. I trust your understanding of the T80 is better than Russia's politics and history.
Sounds like a Russian.
It probably is. Spotify. Sinead Flan.
Sinead Flan, yeah.
1977. I'm a big fan of Russian tanks, and this one is no different. Keep making them. I'll let you do that one.
So we got a lot from this Villos, and the name goes on. Where do you guys live? Because the background is a museum from the Netherlands, am I right? And this was when the Totally Tanked logo was did have it's what Rob's...
No, that's the old shirt.
Yeah.
That's the other shirt.
It's the other shirt.
That's the one
yes.
I was wearing in the video with Albert.
It was a Leopard 2 in a Netherlands museum. You were correct. All right, so Rick's Mafia says, this tank FUX, not sure what, you should think a hybrid turbine to fight batteries for tea time and being extra sneaky, just a thought. Well, he's right.
It is right. I mean, you can heat up your...
or an auxiliary power unit, which the Americans had in World War II, but...
and their new Abrams version that has a hybrid engine, nice and sneaky.
Yeah.
From Paul Stewart Johnson, I personally love this episode. Just wish that you guys would upload more often. Great work to keep it up. I'm not sure our livers would be able to take that much more often.
Posting frequency is something we think about, but it has to be sustainable. Sebastian said we are informative and funny, and
thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you. Yes. So the Chaffee only had Spotify comments.
Adam said 6 months ago, listening to the comments, could do an episode on tankettes and just cover a bunch in one. Also, wheeled French vehicals. When?
We'll have to run out of a lot of text.
I was about to say, we'll get there. Don't worry, we'll get there. Pringle guy, how about the Jag Panther? Jag Panther rather than Jag. Yeah. Is there a different? Probably.
Yeah.
Sinead Flann back again. Watch the Bridget Remigan. It's got loads of chaffies. Yes. Did we mention that? No, I think we talked about the chaff. I think we talk about the chaffies fighting Godzilla more than anything.
True.
That could have been it. Cove, nice light tank and a great podcast. I'll leave a 5-star review. Now we all know 7-star reviews, boys and girls.
But five is the correct number of stars. Leave some reviews, whatever platform you're listening on, and
go nuts.
5, yes. Andre, what's his question there, Rob?
Could you do like a CV-90? Love your podcast.
Hey. This is your episode, my friend.
Please do something Finnish next. You know what? CV-90 also Finnish. That's for Juhani K.
It's a Finnish name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
can't handle that.
Yeah.
Scandinaviator said, please do an episode on some Swedish Norwegian tanks like CV-90-120 or something. Love your stuff. Keep it up. This episode is dedicated to you. From
Scribble, sorry. Just wanted to say, love your podcast. Probably love to hear you talk about the BT series, especially the BT-42 with Finland.
That's one for the future. We'll take that on board.
Yeah.
KS said they need to do one on the Panther 2. We'll get there one day, but that's...
I think we kind of covered it with the
Panther episode. Yeah, there weren't that many made or used.
Well, it didn't happen. I mean, it's just they thought about it. And said, you know, we're just going to upgrade the Panther rather than muck around with this Panther 2 stuff.
SJP said, hello, fantastic episode. I really enjoy the interviews. Could you do an episode on the CV-90 family at some point?
There we go.
Just no one ever say we don't listen to what our audience says.
Giving the people what they want. NOLA. What's NOLA stand for again?
New Orleans, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Avoiding religion and politics is always a good way to get more monetary support.
Question mark.
Question mark?
Yeah, well, we don't need it that bad. So Villas noted the Chaffee is pretty fast.
Yep. From Finn, Chaffee, good choice. I was waiting for this.
Glad we sorted you out there, mate.
Rick Sabanet, what? Gutter Snipe says you should do an episode on waterborne vehicles, fighting vehicles, whether my BMMC uncle in Nam or what in the surface effects boats with 30mm Bushmaster. Nelson times pattern. You want some Nelson time? Well, I mean, the PT-76.
That's your episode on that.
And then we get to the Type 99 episode from Reserva 120.
That's Alan.
Oh, is it? Oh, there you go. Fully tracked big main gun armored turret. If Communist China's Type 99 driver gets out and makes a cup of tea, then there's an anti-communist Burmese freedom fighter that grabs a nearby RPG and shoots question. Is the Type 99 tank now an IFV? Freedom for all IFVs.
Freedom for all IFVs.
There you go.
We can support that. Thank you, Alan. Not all of your comments have made it into this because they need a lot of unpacking. But yeah.
Love you, Alan. Right, CL49908. I missed this episode and watched it late. Nevertheless, thank you and and all contributions to the show podcast. Seriously, thanks.
Tasman. Watch out for incoming communists in the chat. Looking forward to maybe a better tank than the Farda in the chat because they have access to better computer tech. Stay tuned. Way more produced, over 1,200. Is based on the T-72 design, in my opinion. The T-99 is a good fit for China, probably one of the best tanks out there of the evil red triangle autocratic countries. Its turret, though, for the Chinese Space Forces will still go high in the sky as the Russian ones. Good joke at the end there, Tasman.
Princess Celestia 4907.
Comrade Princess Celestia.
Oh, Comrade. Oh, sorry, it was too long. One of my favorite tanks, the ZTZ-99A.
Ned, this is on one of our t-shirts. This is probably the second best podcast in the Australian language.
Love it, Ned.
Thank
Good work. Yeah, that's it. I mean, was Ned the provided that comment in the first place, or somebody else?
I'm not sure of the origin there. Yeah, that was the first time I'd noticed it. But yeah.
But we've taken that and we've run with it. The second best podcast, probably the second best podcast in the Australian language, because
it's a bit like the old Carlsberg ad, probably the best here in the world.
And the Australian language just narrows it down nicely as well. To say, well,
look, we're not Hamish and Andy. Those guys, you know, we're never going to be them. That's okay.
Gabatron says, didn't listen to it all yet, but I'm sure it's amazing as always. I would like to have an episode about the KV2 as well.
Maybe one day. Beppy, Lisa, you guys are doing great. Unrelated, but I'm from Canada and would like to see a Ram Sexton episode. Another idea I had was a naming convention around the Wood episode, but it might not be interesting. Okay.
Kevin, I love your show, guys, but I'm waiting with bated breath for the Abrams episode.
So we.
Some recent details about the M1 in Ukraine action would be icing on the cake. It's battle tested, so credit is due.
It's our great white whale. It's out there somewhere.
Oh, that and the Panzer IV.
Yeah, we did also long ago in a pub agree with Nicholas Moran, the chieftain, that we'd get him involved in the episode, which makes it more complicated. But because he's a long way away, it's not his fault. That's our fault for not organising it. But yeah,
the Waldies. Nice episode so far, but there is a measurement for 10 centimeters. It's 1 decimeter.
He is correct, but no one knows what that is, and that's our problem.
I bet the French know. All right, from Zizor again. The Type 99 is good chains tank, has good armor, and good engine power.
Yes, it does. Good work.
On the Cromwell.
Cromwell, which was our most watched episode last year.
Mate, it was. I think it was all to do with, was it last year? No, it was this year.
It's this year.
It was this year.
Yeah.
No, you said last year.
Oh, sorry, in the year just gone.
Yes, but it was. I think it was all to do with your history buff segment for
the history of Oliver Cromwell. That was good, but also the way we unveiled what Viscount Morris had done to British tank production, I think was a real contribution to general knowledge there. Anyway, Baby Green said Oliver Cromwell's awesome. Alan said the John half-hour history is a great new addition. Maybe Rob will take a stab. Pithy and clean, but shockingly balanced and pro-human. Nothing more than vile revisionist, socialist, awful, disgusting people. Still great show. Would like to know something more about the Cromwell turret mantle. Okay. Sexy Man said that, love that historical bit for Oliver Cromwell. I just started Mike Duncan's Revolutions podcast, and he starts with the English Wars. Highly recommend.
Mr. Sakioko, W2F, you guys are great looking. Thank you very much. I was waiting for a horror show. Well, not this time. It's like getting a tank lecture from your friend's dad, me, and Jack Black, long-time Spotify listener, first-time YouTube watcher.
Now, back when I was young, and Jack Black's first real screen appearance was High Fidelity with John Cusack. I look like John Cusack, not Jack Black, but I accept I have gotten older. But I would never throw my friend under a bus for making a joke that everyone was thinking, Jack Black, you suck.
I'm thinking about the joke. Not saying it, though.
Yeah. We'll move past that, but Jack Black sucks. And I am better than him. Not as rich, though.
Pump Love 81. Delightful as always. Also a nuanced opinion about the Bradleys killing the T-90. As a proud Indian, I was getting worried for our Armoured Corps, but looks like they'll do all right.
Yeah, I mean, they've got issues, but there's some very sound thinking, as you'd expect from a country like India, which has always done a lot of thinking. Michael Kenny said, has to be the dumbest, most ill-informed account of both the Cromwell and Normandy. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate your input.
James Grantham 1264. After listening to you from the start, it's funny to see you in the flesh, so to speak. Always enjoyed the podcast, beer review, and general bloke talk. Well, we're all about bloke talk.
That's what we're here for.
Yep.
Fox Mechanics says, I personally think the Cromwell is annoying in War Thunder because, one, its cannon is unreliable, its armor is absolute crap, and it's slow. And, sir, you don't need the War Thunder take on that. War Thunder represented it well.
All right. Vizor again. The Cromwell is just like the Chaffee, but British.
That's a good point. Finn said, finally, Cromwell, let's go. Now, Rob, what are we doing on beer? What's happening with the beer?
What flavour would you like? More Dutch lager or VB?
Let's stick with the Dutch.
All right.
See if I can get it open this time.
All right. So
here it goes.
On the C1 Ariete, Baby Green 162 says, to be honest, like it if it was more like a Fiat. Sexy Man 12360, with Poland buying hundreds of Abrams and K2, do you think they're going to start making their own homegrown tank designs anytime soon? No. I don't think they will. I think they'll quite happily play everybody, like Romania, play everybody off to say, do you want to sell us some tanks? Do you want to sell us some tanks? And go from there. Jamie Stokes, Ariete, the little tank that could. I certainly agreed. From Spotify, Sinead Flan, 1977. Can you do an episode on the T-3485?
We did an episode on the T-34 back in the dark ages when it was just audio only, and it'll be a long time before we do a T-34 variant, I think. But anyway, there you go. Thank you for asking that.
Next, 1066, will you make an episode of the King Tiger?
Tick.
Done.
Did that this year.
Andre, hey, I'm your longtime fan. Could you maybe do this CV-90? Here we are.
Hey!
Here we are, Andre. Dant Willar, mouse next, please. Well, that's certainly
We've got a few requests for the mouse. That's definitely moving up the list.
I mean, like two built. I mean, it's hard to just kind of do anything, and there's no actually combat experience. So anyway, all right, great episode. From Sebastian, great episode, and I am very excited about the next tank. From Vizor again, this is great episode. That's in all caps. So that's why I was going to shout about. Please make an episode about the M1 Abrams.
Probably. I think we'll just do an Abrams episode. Yeah. Finn said, when I saw it said Ariete, I thought you were talking about the Italian fighter jet. Well, that's fair enough. It does mean eagle or something, doesn't it?
Oh, Ram. No, it was Ram.
Okay, Ram. Yeah. Sorry.
Nikki, great podcast. Stupend. Means stupendous.
Yep. The end, Kraft said, great episode as always. Thank you for that. Now, moving on to the M48 Patton episode. Alexander Hodge, hope you're around somewhere, mate. Said, super choked, I missed this one. I love myself the good old M48. Too bad I was on night shift. I'll be sure to make it next month.
Mulvers, another great episode. Thanks, lads. My favourite Patton moment remains Patton's fighting Rommel's Pattons in the movie Patton.
That is a good moment.
That is a good moment.
Medi, this is the Patton episode, of course, said, now this is a well-needed slap into reality about the entire history of General Patton. I was taught at Fort Knox to worship the man and did until I learned more about him. Thank you for this.
All right.
Cheers, man.
That was a good episode. Good little section, John. Smugly 6793. I've always loved the M48. It's the most tank-looking tank in my mind.
It is a very tank-looking tank. You can't take that away from
Texas Nationalist, 1836. I'm assuming that's when the Alamo or something was.
God knows.
Oh my God, Patton had money and I don't. That's wine.
Yeah. So it's a mixed caps on that one. And anyone who self-identifies as a Texas Nationalist, I would treat exactly as I would someone who identifies as an Australian nationalist.
Yeah.
Which is that anyone who views themselves as a nationalist doesn't know their history very well.
No. Pump Love 81. Pump Love. Another banger, including the start. I had to reconnect my Wi-Fi 3 to 4 times before realizing it was you guys. Yes, it was us. Yes, I have seen a few in different cities in India, which my parents forced me to pose in front of as a child, like that improved me odds of landing a hot one. I hope it did. Also, are there good primers for reading up on the caliber of the different guns you folks discuss? At times, I'm quite lost.
Just say Wikipedia would be a good start. Wikipedia is not always reliable, but gun calibers, it's pretty solid.
Yep.
All right, and the Spotify comments.
Visor, very nice. 5 stars.
Mm.
Nice. Jonas says, please make an episode on the Object 292 or 278, please.
We have no idea what those are, but we will look into them.
Yep. Sharkfin 365, do the L333.
What are that? What's that? Okay.
I'm assuming it's a tank. Slack, overall, I prefer the Leopard 1.
Which is a fair assessment.
Pringle guy, I think you should do the King Tiger.
Done. Sorted.
Anjit Chandra, great episode. Love the part about the Indo-Pakistani War. I have read this book, M48 Patton versus Centurion, Indo-Pakistani Wars, 1968, which had a lot of relevant info.
Good stuff. Next said, when will you do the King Tiger? We've done it, guys. Okay, you all wanted the King Tiger, we have delivered for you.
Niha, episode was good, but disappointed that the jingle doesn't play before the beer review anymore. Please bring back that jingle.
So that jingle from the early episodes belongs to the Dreadnoughts, and we never had permission, and we don't want to get sued or have to delete episodes. So while it was a very good jingle from the song Jolly Rouge, we just need to move on from that.
When he says we, he means he, because I have no idea how any of this works. I just turn up and talk. Anyway. John does all the work.
Anyway, the Dreadnoughts are a great band, and everyone who likes this podcast would enjoy listening to them. So
Cove says, cool tank with lots of battles fought with it.
Indeed. The Renault FT.
All right, from Albert to Monterosori. Also, the first Italian tank designated as the Fiat 3000.
I think we mentioned them in the show, but yes.
We do. We certainly
stuff.
do.
Mm-hmm. Sexy man!
Keep on tanking is unironically great.
We should probably put that on a t-shirt.
You should probably put that on a t-shirt.
Okay. Pump Love. What's Pump Love got to say?
Again, it's extremely heartening to know that strapping gentlemen, like the presenters, had some episodes of gaps with attractive women, but it's her loss. Another banger of an episode.
That was me talking about how I misidentified a Renault FT.
Thinking it was a Japanese tank in the war.
Yeah. Now the Spotify comments. Now I think we'll just call this Palege. M18, please. Love your podcast. We've done the M18.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just go back and search. Villozer said very nice. Sinead Plan, can you do the T72 or T80, please?
Both done.
Tick.
Dunt Willa, once again, great episode.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Yan Tuan, could you do the Strict Sparks in 103? Done.
Yeah.
Got to look back in the back catalogue, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Melp and Fold, could you do the M10, please? That is, on the other hand, is something we do need to do. The Jackson, and there is one up in Cairns, so we'll do one. We'll do something.
Do something with that.
Yeah. Cove, great podcast. Thanks for also posting it in Spotify. Maybe do an episode on the AMX 40. Certainly, you can try.
That is a tank to put on the list. Yeah.
TR85 episodes from Captivate Them. Multi-misc. I have no idea what that means. You absolute beauties, you mad lads, actually did it. Fuate tare.
And then some thumbs.
I'm assuming they probably speak more Italian than we do.
That's Romanian.
Romanian. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm thinking so. What am I thinking?
And Alexander, that was him. He's in the comments. He's happy. All right. So Egdar said, strange creature. Fair comment. Gabrielle Flame said, hey guys, up until this point, I've been following this program through the podcast on Spotify since the live streams are quite late for me in the Pacific Northwest. I was dropping in to ask you guys if you could do an episode on the M103 sometime in the future. If so, that would be freaking awesome. That is definitely a tank we need to talk about.
We certainly do. Yeah. Ben Hovermail, you should do a podcast on the M109 Paladin or the German Weasel family.
Both good choices.
Weasel. Scribble 70. I didn't know Romania had a domestically produced tank.
No, neither did we.
There you go.
We learned. We all learn things together. It's like a Pokemon episode.
What geo joke?
Sexy Man says we need to talk about the FV4005 rolling around at Bovington. I think we have mentioned it in the past, and should we ever get to Bovington, we will talk more. But well done, Bovington, for getting it going.
Oh god, the biggest turreted tank or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a Centurion with an oversized turret on it. But yeah, sure, it's good. We love it. It's good.
All right, X Magma 4633. We could have Abrams or Leopards, but we mainly keep old tech because it's cheap to maintain and because the higher ranks are too lazy to spend more money to change our MBTs. with new ones. They upgraded the TR-85 many times and at its latest modernization. Even Ukraine use different types of tanks, and usually they get destroyed by drones or they get heavy damage very easily. So I think it's a big factor in our MBT's modernization because of the war footage. But maybe in a few years we will have Abrams.
Hopefully with an anti-drone system. Ilo Milo says, great story. Moving on to the Spotify comments, Villa, please do Kampfwagen E100. It was unfinished, but that's the mouse, yeah?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
no, that was half the size of the mouse.
Oh.
It was the so you went from the Tiger 2 to the E75 to the E100. It was going to be, so they had the overlapping road wheels and the same sort of design, but each one got twice as big. And then the mouse was twice as big as the E100.
Anyway, they want to know more about its turret. World of Tanks shows the Cuba turret, while War Thunder shows the mouse turret. Okay.
Nice.
Meow said meow, 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 meow.
No, but then, and then meow, 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 meow.
I didn't want to read them all, but we did it anyway. Great. 3N, and it goes on, says Romania built Puma helicopters during this time. This is weirder than wanting a Western engine in their tank. Fair comment. Effing Slayer says PZ4 soon. Also amazing content as usual.
Thank you.
Yeah, PZ4 soon is coming soon.
It'll be P38, so the Panzer 38T episode from soon certified pilot. First, hello.
Now, I think that's a first comment which went out of fashion in the late 90s, but I'm glad someone's hanging on to that.
Got you got it. Yeah. Panzer Tracks says, love your channel. Hope I can make it to the stream next week here in the Netherlands.
Sexy Man's back, saying absolute fave in World of Tanks. On Spotify, Palej says, great tank. Sergeant Sprinkles says, it's not a bad tank to be fair, especially in War Thunder. Lots of letters and numbers says, if you want to play the PZ-38T, you can still use it in War Thunder, unlike World of Tanks.
From Arthur McMicken. Nice. The T-62 episode from Carter Heller. Just got the T-62 in War Thunder, and it's so badass.
It had a hell of a gun for its time. Yep.
Zendek, this was a lot of nonsense. Is this one?
Thanks for your feedback. We appreciate it. We'll
From Brandon, dang it, I missed the live streams. I'm setting several alarms on the next one.
Yeah, we know we need to look at the time we send these out, but this is, for a global audience, not the worst possible time.
And it makes sense for us.
And it makes sense for us, which is a big
we don't want to start drinking this heavily at 9 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock probably is. Probably we feel that our lives are day drinking for what we do, even though we're enclosed in a little room in a basement. Hang on.
Just think, we are looking at the times, but we don't have any plans to change right now.
No.
So we got called up on a political comment here by Erling Hope saying Trump killed fewer people. Roughly 20% of the 1 million COVID deaths are estimated to have been preventable if he hadn't gutted and disbanded the Pandemic Response Office. Minimised the threat repeatedly, mock mask, whereas that's 200,000 body count. That's the Trump body count. And I would still say, compared to Obama and compared to every American president since, Madison, I despise Trump. I despise the looting that his family's about to conduct, but he didn't kill a lot of people in wars as by the standard body count of a US president. Now,
I was about to say, so he didn't kill them by, I totally agree. He murdered a lot of people by his bad pandemic response, but yes, he hasn't actually tried to get out of it stuff.
But give him time.
I was about to say, we got a whole new 4 years of seeing what he can achieve. All right, hang on, which episode is this one? No, hang on. Sorry,
we're still in the last one.
That's right. It's T62. Let's keep going.
Yep.
Fox Mechanics. This podcast is so awesome. I'm probably one of the youngest and German listener. I absolutely love tank design and military in general, and this is a peak podcast for tank lovers like me.
That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
All right.
Sebastian, greetings from Austria. I want to thank you guys for making this amazing podcast and hope you are doing great. I think we are.
Doing all right.
I think we're fine.
We can afford beer and camera equipment. That's really all we're hoping for in this world. Finn let us know he got to watch and meet the RAAF Roulettes, and we thank them for letting us know that.
Yeah, that's great.
Arnard Heeft said thank you for making this podcast, and thank you for listening, Arnard.
Laddie 1.0 Hey, greetings from Germany. First of all, really nice episode about the T-62. Second, I would love to hear some episodes about IFVs and the general history of tanks and the wars they have fought in, and some criticism. I think it would be a bit nice to look a bit more into the prototypes of the tanks. For example, the Leopard 2K for the Leopard 2. I hope my English isn't too bad. It was much better than my German. Let's just put it that way.
Your English is fine, and we will take your points on board.
Heavies, the heavy episodes from some squiggly line person.
It looks Korean. Could be wrong. Big thumbs up.
It's a
That's good.
squiggly line person. Ben Hover Mail. I just printed a T95. Very cool. Love the podcast.
Bill Ball Buster says the A39 Tortoise was arguably the most successful of the heavy assault tanks that emerged from World War II. Nuffield built 6 pilot tanks by 1945. And these were sent to Germany for extensive testing. Though weighing in at 68 tons, it was
78 tons.
Sorry, 78 tons. It was found to be as agile as the 40-ton Churchill used in World War II, but its firepower was tremendous. The 32-pounder Sabo round was not bedded in penetration until the L7 rounds of the 1980s, which is a good point.
There you go. Sexy man. Love the show, boys. For M1E3 name, I put forward the great American cavalry commander James Ewell Brown Stewart. Name it the M2 Jeb.
I guarantee you,
it's not going to be that.
Donald Trump is not going to call the tank the Jeb because of Jeb Bush.
Yep.
And I would say Jeb Stewart's greatest contribution was disappearing in the Battle of Gettysburg, leaving Lee blind. And
yep.
For that, we thank him.
Yep. All right. From Razor XYZ. Do the Kranwagen.
Don't know what that is.
Well, it depends. I mean, it just means tank in Swedish, doesn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
BT42, please, from Parledge. Bizan says, can you please do Stugs, the German tank destroyer? Early episode has been done. It is up there.
Yep. Visa again. Nice. Kevin, please do the Abrams.
Look, I think we'll try and get the Abrams done this year, but we
look. Is it an election promise, or is it a core promise, or is it a?
I'm just saying that we have a verbal agreement with the most famous person in tanktainment to work with us on that episode, and we need to.
Well, if he turns up to Cairns, we're definitely going to bloody nail him down there.
Yeah. But John will hold that to him. But
so Chunks Machine Spirit. Now is time for yet another amazing episode about the Mark I tank from World War I. The true father of all tanks.
No, I actually reckon the Mark IV is the real one. But anyway, we will do some more World War I tanks, but we need to be a bit careful on that because they're a bit dull.
Paul Stewart Johnson. Used to listen to this podcast a lot, but I just sort of stopped for a bit and forgot about it. Now I've tuned back in. I can tell you it's still amazing. Keep it up, guys.
Thank you.
Lati
says, nice episode again. Like that you're going over some prototypes. Would be cool to see more of that in the future. For example, the K1 Thumper, the Black Knight, or the Marder 2.
Sound good?
Yeah, they're all good.
Finn says, Tootle.
Don't know what that means, but thank you.
Cove says, D25, Doom Turtle.
Do you think Tootle was Doom
Turtle? Yeah.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah. Enrico Chaffee says, I love tanks. My personal favorite is the T-34 58D.
I don't know the 58s.
I'm assuming it's meant to be the 85D, but anyway.
Okay.
Dan Twiller, once again, a great episode. Thank you. Tiger 2 episodes.
We're coming down the end of the street for anyone who's still listening to us, so don't worry, we're not going to be on too much longer.
We are 5 minutes away, 6 minutes away from our longest episode yet again.
We could get there.
All right, from Baby Green. The Soviets apparently opted to progressively increase tank gun caliber because their AP shells tended to shatter when hitting armor above a certain velocity. That's one of the reasons why the IS-2 ended up with a 122mm gun instead of the 100mm gun. The APC round of the latter wasn't ready in time.
Which is very true.
Yep.
But also, the Soviets realised that a big piece of high explosive will stuff a tank up.
Just blow everything off the outside.
Gaganator said, sound came out great on this one. I don't know what you did differently, but it worked. Tiger 2 was what the Germans needed. They didn't have enough fuel to make use of a greater number of tanks, much less mass-produced ones, which is a good point.
Wi-Fi Soldier 5076, not exactly a tank, but could you please do a video on the French EBRC Jaguar?
Is that the bomber?
No, it's the wheeled one
okay.
with a turret and gun on it. I can't remember if it's a 105 or a 120.
Stuart P.
It'll be in War Thunder.
Sure.
In fact, I think it's actually in World of Tanks as well. I have seen wheeled vehicles running around in World of Tanks and going, what the hell are these things? They're not tanks.
What happens if you shoot the wheels?
Hit points. You take off hit points.
So they should just blow up.
Which is why, War Thunder is different in that you probably can take out. They probably have run flat tires.
Now, one of my favourite comments of the year, Stuart P. on this episode, talking about our interview with Mother of Tanks, said the Pershing in America is about defending the little guys. Moment was a little awkward for me, lol. And that was an interesting case of perspective where an American has a view, and it is an enduring quality in most Americans do like the underdog, and they view their own stuff in that lens. And I thought it was an interesting comment and an interesting moment of perspective. But I do think for Stuart P, it was like, oh, that's a weird way to look at things. Sexy Man.
Best podcast on the internet.
Probably have a t-shirt that says
that. with who wrote it?
Yeah. Sexy Man.
Sexy Man says, best podcast on the internet.
Now, Brandon came in with another t-shirt recommendation immediately after that, saying a shirt saying King Tiger the Big Kitty would be pretty fun. Yeah, we should probably do that.
All right. Lawrence online in English says, Tigers are rubbish. All right. Snuggly City, I expected this one to be two self-proclaimed experts spouting nonsense in order to tickle their egos, especially when they started talking about Ukraine. But this is actually all good information. Don't worry, we are still two self-proclaimed, enthusiasts.
Yeah.
But we spout a lot of nonsense.
Thank you, Snuggle City. We appreciate that you have taken the time to look at what we're doing and say, they're not actually complete dickheads.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. More from Brandon, who's still on the line. Good stuff.
Great episode. I learned things, as always. I never had good suggestions for real episodes, but for April Fools, I'm accruing a plethora. The Toyota Hilux, the Chechen Cybertrucks, and the Russian biplane tank, Ripsaw M5, and the Da Vinci tank. I'm not. Yeah, I think these will. We can do something with these. May not all be in the same year, but I can definitely think of. We can come up with a April Fool's type of things like the old Furphy tank.
Mm-hmm. Now, Bizan said, "Do the VK36H, please," and
that's a precursor to the Tiger. So, So basically, one of the it was.
Jonas wants the VK3002.
I don't know that one.
Stuff. Finn says German tank development in a nutshell. Hans, we need it. Oh, sorry. So Finn said German tank development in a nutshell. Hans, we need a bigger transmission. Bigger cannon, you say.
9, better transmission.
More armor, you say.
9, better transmission.
Battleship cannon.
Yeah, Hans.
And we had rehearsed that, so I thought we came out okay on the improv there.
That was a good little skit that he put together there for us.
Cove said, big money here. Definitely one of my favourite tanks of WW2. Big gun and big armour makes it awesome.
Shark Fin says, do the Flak Panzer series, please.
Probably worth doing. Good thinking. And to round this out, we now get to the PT-76, which was one of my favourite tanks and episodes. Rob, what do we got here?
Just because you like jet boats, is it?
Yeah, I like jet boats.
All right, there you go. Oh, yes, the Pippa tank.
Ben Hovermail says, love you guys. We love you too, whoever you are,
all.
wherever you are.
Hot Lanta says, I've always been a fan of the PT-76.
And in Spotify comments, Rapper Savage said, absolutely love the podcast, lads. When do you next go live? Here we are. Right now. It's all happening. I did reply with a helpful answer. I'll just want to let you know. Sir Tronk's Machine Spirit, which is going to be my favourite of all these user IDs.
I mean, Machine Spirit is a 40k reference, obviously.
Yes.
So Chonk is
a fat guy.
Yep. Okay. So what is anyway? Can you do the Stone Tiger as a meme, John? That's up to you.
I think we'll just have to do a Stem Tiger. But
yeah.
and then we got someone called Sam with a plane emoji using a boat emoji as a comment. And that is our longest ever episode, I believe, right?
We're just over a minute longer?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Than the Churchill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Churchill, I'm pretty sure. All right. Look, guys, folks.
Oh, hang on. It looks like we're ready to go.
Let's finalise the poll with 19 votes. The CV-90 is the shiny future of 53%. something weird Nordic thing at 21%, and just another IFV at 26%. Look, I think it's a great little IFV.
And light tank.
And
it is fundamentally a light tank.
It is.
Yeah.
But and I do love a lot of the concepts and stuff that they're trying to do with it, and saying, "Wow, that looks really cool." Especially the adaptive camouflage.
Because when you do the onion of protection, not being identified as a tank is the best layer.
You're not going to shoot what you don't see. So they've made a decent effort, but it's still just an IFE. It is not a tank. Even if you want to throw a 120mm gun on the side of it and say this is what's going to happen, but 40mm gun Bofors will do most of the things the 120 will, except take out other tanks. So it's direct fire support.
And the weird thing with that 40mm Bofors, because it is literally, it's moved on a lot, but it is based, the 40mm Bofors is a World War II design. And you remember the British banged on about how they couldn't get a high explosive round in a 40mm casing, which is why the 2-pounder.
The 6-pounder.
Yeah, but even the 2-pounder was a 40mm. And can't do high explosive, can't do high explosive. And yet the Bofors 40mm anti-aircraft gun was literally available to the British. They put it on their ships all the time, and they probably would have done better with tanks like Crusader with a Bofors gun than their 2-pounder.
I think it was the Czechs or somebody throwing the Bofors into some of their early tanks.
Yeah. Anywho, thank you so much, folks, for listening. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas.
Us all this time.
And I'm pretty sure I've got the right video queued to take us out, so we're going to do that, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Brandon. We appreciate it. Thank you, Alexander. Let's just have a quick look, Rob. How many people do you reckon we've still got listening?
17.
We got 7. Woo! All right. Thanks, folks. We'll see you soon.